get started. All right, let's see, calling this meeting of the Sherborn Conservation Commission to order June 3rd, 2021, virtual meeting, 7:15 p.m. First item would be to add topics not reasonably anticipated in 48 hours in advance. Anything?
Yeah, I have a couple things.
Okay.
I'm sorry, these should have been on the agenda, but I didn't do so good at it this time. We need to have an agent search update, forgive me.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to touch base on if anybody knows anything more about whether or not the selectmen have changed their policy about appointing people. I know they've been talking about it.
Okay, so let's see. Actually, one of the applicants, Anna Meyer, is actually on our meeting because she's going to observe, and she had just mentioned in chat that she's here. So this is great. Let's see. The only thing I'm reluctant to put anything on there that wasn't. It really is. I mean, if we can fit it under site issues, let's do that. But otherwise, if it's not something that couldn't have been anticipated in 48 hours in advance, I think we might have to take it up in a different fashion.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Stickler.
What about extenuating circumstances because we don't have an agent?
I think we'll be able to fit the things in you mentioned anyway.
Yeah, I think we can fit them in under site issues. Okay, so all right, let's get started. Does anybody have any poetry or other thing they would like to share? Great, I've got something. Hold on one second. Somebody's ringing the doorbell. All right, so this is not a poem, but it's just an excerpt from this book called Mutual Aid by Peter Kropotkin, an old anarchist from Russia. And he sort of saw the application of Darwin's theory as like, nature red in tooth and claw as really being misplaced. And he felt that the real dominant thing in evolution that made it work was mutual aid, cooperation, which is pretty cool. So anyway, I just was going to read a couple of paragraphs of his stuff because I kind of like the way he writes, and I just thought it's just interesting. So, so he starts out this book, Mutual Aid. Two aspects of animal life impressed me most during the journeys which I made in my youth in eastern Siberia and northern Manchuria. One of them was the extreme severity of the struggle for existence which most species of animals have to carry on against an inclement nature, the enormous destruction of life which periodically results from natural agencies, and the consequent paucity of life over the vast territory which fell under my observation. And the other was that even in those few spots where animal life teemed in abundance, I failed to find, although I was eagerly looking for it, that bitter struggle for the means of existence among animals belonging to the same species, which was considered by most Darwinists, though not always by Darwin himself, as the dominant characteristic of struggle for life and the main factor of evolution. In fact, wherever I saw animal life in abundance, as for instance on the lakes where, hold on a second, these people are pestering me. As for instance on the lakes where scores of species and millions of individuals came together to rear their progeny, in the colonies of rodents, in the migrations of birds which took place at that time on a truly American scale along the Ussuri, and especially in a migration of fallow deer, which I witnessed on the Amur, and during which scores of thousands of these intelligent animals came together from an immense territory, flying before the coming deep snow, in order to cross the Amur where it is narrowest. In all these scenes of animal life which passed before my eyes, I saw mutual aid and mutual support carried on to an extent which made me suspect in it a feature of the greatest importance for the maintenance of life, the preservation of each species, and its further evolution. And finally, I saw among the semi-wild cattle and horses in Transbaikalia, among the wild ruminants everywhere, the squirrels and so on, that when the animals have to struggle against scarcity of food in consequences of one of the above-mentioned causes, the whole of that portion of the species which is affected by the calamity comes out of the ordeal so much impoverished in vigor and health that no progressive evolution of the species can be based upon such periods of keen competition. So.
Well said.
All right, that's it.
Yes, no, I agree. Much too much on the competition versus the cooperation, which is
Right,
a
right.
big theme, and a lot. I read other authors at that time too that emphasized that too.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's sort of that the struggle for life is kind of is always associated with Darwin, and the fact is he didn't really see it that way.
Right.
He saw natural selection not only as sort of this competition, as this sort of brute competition, but also this, other mechanisms. It's pretty. Okay, great. So let's see. Conservation land use.
Yes. Only a few minutes until 7:30, and some new circumstances have come up on using up the remaining budget. First, we approved last meeting that the McGregor Quarry kiosk would be the top choice, given a limited amount of extra funds. It turns out, after going through final accounting with Michael and others, that there will almost certainly be 500 or more, and possibly $1,000 in addition to that available from other accounts that will be underspent. And the question is how to use those funds, given that we don't know how much they're going to be, and given that I was at the barber with Carol and Jean on Monday, and we were looking at the chips under the crabapple grove and decided that was indeed the highest priority, but we don't know if DPW can provide the chips on time. So what I would propose, given the time tonight and that we've only got a few weeks to do all this, that whether it's a vote or not, I don't know, but give me the authority to do what seems best in consultation with Jean, with Michael, and with any one other commissioner who wants to be in this loop.
Well, yeah, let's spend the money.
I would move that. I move that Kelly spend the money.
Yeah, second.
I don't want to just spend it haphazardly.
No, what in consultation with Michael and Jean. That sounded great.
I have a, I am wondering if we could use some of that money to plant native shrubs, perhaps in that area by the apple orchard that's in that wetland area. Because we've talked about that, but we haven't done it. And that just seems like that would be a really good use of that money rather than just continuing to spread chips.
I wouldn't say I'm opposed or not, but I think we ought to plant new native shrubs over there in the absence of a water supply, only after some careful thought about how that's going to get maintained. And I don't see it in the next couple of weeks.
You don't think it can happen in the next couple of weeks?
Well,
No, and I don't think we have enough money for it anyway.
Oh,
The other priorities after the chips, assuming whether we can or can't do the chips, they're the connector trail from Curve Street to the Barber Homestead Meadow is quite overgrown. There's a tree down, and it would take some hours for Ed Barry to brush it out and to clean up a very, very bad spot just south of the parking lot along Western Avenue. Then we have long stretches of stone walls at Hopestill along Mill Street and High East along Western Avenue that are crying out for clearing. Those would be my next priorities. But Carol, yes, let's think about some new native plantings over there. But given our experience with the garden, I'm really worried about maintenance.
yeah, we should definitely take a look and maybe see if somebody like Ted could come take a look.
I mean, I think Kelly's suggestions do make sense, even if there was time to discuss native plantings. Having worked with several people over the course of the summer, 2 summers ago, to water that little garden, and how much work that took to get it established. I feel like we should not be taking on any new projects. We have so much to maintain.
Maybe we could take it offline. I guess I've planted so many little native shrubs around my property that
Yeah, let's table it until
and
we
they continue to
until we
grow.
get
So
input.
If you
Yeah.
feel you could find a way, but we could talk about it afterwards, but if you feel you could find a way to do it, and we can do it quickly and get it maintained, or where you're willing to do it, then we could do it. But otherwise, we do have those other options by the roadside stuff, which I think is good for vistas. And I think people like that idea of being able to see our land.
Do we want to continue with this motion?
Oh, I guess it
I-
wasn't.
I mean, if it was in jest, that's fine. That it's,
No, cool with what Kelly proposed. I moved what he proposed, that he spend the money in consultation with Michael and Jean. And I think, Jean, you seconded that?
Yeah.
That wasn't in jest?
okay.
No.
Okay, cool.
Any other discussion?
well, I'd
Okay.
like to be included in the consultation if that's okay.
It's certainly okay.
All right.
It's not free.
We'll have that friendly amendment. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, I, Michael,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
is that everybody?
Yep.
That is, thank you. I have a 7 in my head, even though I don't realize it's there. Okay, so we do have 1 more minute. I move that we appoint Nellie Binder, and I know she's not here tonight, but she submitted quite a nice letter. I move that we appoint her as an associate member of the Conservation Commission.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Neil, I, Michael,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
motion carries. Fantastic.
We're not gonna get in trouble for that, are we?
How so?
That the select board didn't get to see the,
It's an associate member, so it's not the same.
I'm just double checking, because
Yeah, they have nothing to say about associate members.
Yeah,
that's cool with me, but
Well, it's a little unclear whether they could appoint their own, but we'll leave that.
they're free to, absolutely. Okay, great. So let's see, it's 7:30, so let's jump into this SFTA discussion. Before we get started though, let me just kind of lay out a couple things. One is, I know that we have a PowerPoint that Seth had submitted to the commission a couple of weeks ago. Given the fact that we only have a half hour for this discussion, I'm just going to make the assumption that people have reviewed it and reviewed the materials that were circulated earlier this week. So I don't know that we need to go through and have any kind of formal presentation of that point of view, because I think it's the same as what it was when we sort of took it up a few weeks back or a few meetings back. So I'd like to just kind of jump into the discussion, but I did want to just kind of make a couple of just general comments myself. So what I basically wanted to say that, because the proposal hasn't particularly changed from when it was first introduced to us a few meetings back, I would just say, just as one commissioner, my opinion on that really hasn't changed, because I think that the existing order, the way it is actually very broadly permissive. And while there's been this town Weston that's been sort of introduced as an example of how it could become more permissive, I think most of the towns in Massachusetts are probably less permissive than the way we have it set up right now. And I just think that, we could argue that the current order is really, a reflection of our attempt already to create as broad a way for us to allow work in jurisdictional areas as possible. And I'm just, as one commissioner, I just don't necessarily see a path toward being more permissive while still just kind of responsibly discharging our duties under the regulations to make sure that jurisdictional activity is not adversely impacting. So I just wanted to kind of just say that I'm not sure much has changed here in what's being proposed, and so I'm not sure my mind will be changed anyway. But
Hi, James.
so
Hey, James. I guess I guess you're saying that the proposed, just jumping right in,
Yeah.
Kelly in his document basically proposes the addition of 2 issues to section 14. I assume that's what you're referring to specifically, Neil? That-
Well,
Now with just the trail maintenance part, the branches across it. And Seth is the one who has really prepared for this and has the arguments down. And I think it would be best if he took it at least in the beginning.
Okay, so we do have two parts, and whether, so,
Only the trail maintenance, not the bridges. We'll deal with that another time.
oh, only in the, you're only proposing the,
I thought there were two portions to the proposal.
We're only addressing the one to do with trail maintenance today, not bridges.
oh, okay. Well, that one's a little different feel. I
Yeah.
think we would even think that way too, Neil. I guess maybe Seth should give his, he's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the presentation was pretty specific and didn't mention anything about bridges.
Oh, I just saw it as part of the new, the two things that Kelly, I guess, had circulated. So I thought we were tackling everything.
I was trying to be specific that there were two issues, but we were dividing them for consideration.
Okay. All right. I think I misunderstood that.
Yeah, and I think the main, I mean, I think to me, while it's true that our proposal hasn't changed much, what really I got out of our previous conversations was to really understand what the problem is. And it wasn't that we couldn't maintain the trails when we wanted to. It was that the Conservation Commission doesn't really have insight currently into maintenance activities. It doesn't have, it can't effectively stop maintenance from happening, and it can't effectively know what's happening. Because currently, as we stand with the current order of conditions, there's trail maintenance. I pointed to some pictures. There's trail maintenance that happens by private individuals around the town routinely, and I don't think that the commission is really ever notified about it or consulted. So what I was trying to do is bring SFTA in as a facilitator to help not only keep good records so that the commission would understand what is going on and be able to see what's happening and to go review it and say, hey, that's not the right way to do it. Can you adjust? And also to be a public advocate for the commission to say, you shouldn't just go out and maintain trails, but there's particular ways that you should do that. And we can help you with that. Just let us know. We'll be responsive. That's kind of our, the trails are our main priority. And so just to be an organization that would be there to help the commission with public outreach and education. So that's really the change in the proposal is not exactly the specifics of what we wanted to change, but really just understanding really what the problem was and how we could help. Because that was really enlightening to me last time, especially Neil, when you said, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are protecting these. And then kind of going from that, it was clear to me that, stuff's just going on all the time with this current order of conditions. It was supposed to make things easier and you would get a notification, but that just doesn't seem to work. It doesn't seem to be effective. So you're not getting notifications, stuff's just happening. So how can SFTA step in and help with that? How can we, I had some suggestions in the slides. We had really good record keeping and we had public outreach and a couple different things. But really, and even when I talked with the person in Weston, one thing I've observed from talking to different groups is you have kind of these two different camps. One, a lot of towns, they have kind of appointed individuals from the Conservation Commission that perform the trail maintenance. And so then you don't have this channel because they are already given the authority. And then you have groups that just rely on volunteers, and it's really just goes, kind of unsaid, kind of like what Sherborn does, right? Things just happen and volunteers do it. We're thankful for it, but there's not really any oversight. And so, yeah, I was trying to understand, how can we do better than that? Because that is basically what happens. And in town, I found Weston to be very similar to Sherborn in that they have a lot of trails and not that many people. We were on one call with the Natick, it was a Natick Trail Summit, and they were talking about volunteers, and Natick has some like 60 people on the backlog for volunteering to be trail stewards because they have a lot of people, not as many trails. Where at Sherborn, it's quite the opposite. So in my conversations with different people, when you're in that situation, really any barrier, just you won't do the work. You'll say, oh, I have to get permission for this one. Well, let's go to the other one because I don't have time. You can barely keep up with the maintenance that you do have to do. So really any kind of barrier, just as a matter of, kind of logistics, you'll be out there doing stuff and, this one's in wetlands. We better contact them. Okay, we'll do it next time then. And you say the same thing every time you're out there because there's, 20 other things to do that you can barely get done. So that was really that's the change, is not coming here and saying, give us more permission, but coming here and saying, look, I understand your problem now better from our previous conversations. I understand why you have this problem, and here are some ideas that we can kind of facilitate that for you. I don't know if that helps kind of in the perspective change.
It does present a different, your presentation is not what I was reading from the materials that were sent to us, but maybe that's because I was looking also at Kelly's memo. And I know you wrote the memo, Kelly, right after the last meeting. So maybe maybe things have changed, but in the memo, you do sort of break it down into asking for two different things. So, okay, so we'll put aside the question of can we include bridge building and trail relocation under section 14 of the order of conditions. Let's look at the other piece of this. And let me ask you, Seth, are you no longer asking that in our last discussion, you were asking, or the SFTA was asking, can we please go ahead with this work without having to fill out this one-page form? Are you not asking that anymore?
Nope, that's still the ask, but it's under kind of a different perspective.
So let me take it a little further. If you're not rejecting section 14 of the order, or rather, I don't know, are you rejecting that form still? And if so, rather, if you're volunteering to do public outreach and education, what I would love to see is if SFTA could play a role in, spreading the word about the order of conditions and the notice to perform work form that has to be filled out.
Right. I think what we're not rejecting the form. What we're saying is that in our experience, and from most people that we've talked to, the result is not going to be that you're going to get more notifications. The result is either going to be people are going to ignore it, or they're not going to do the work. And I can certainly say that would be what I would do, is I would see something and I would say, that's in wetlands, let's just climb over it and we'll go do something else. Because there's so much to get done, really any barrier is just a barrier, and it just will prevent the work from getting done, or somebody else will just come along and do it, and I don't know who they are. And I think that's the outcome of the order of conditions as it stands today. I really don't think you're going to get any better than that. So that's why I'm saying,
well, what if SFTA offered to comply, and then as part of the education, when you run into situations where people who aren't aware of the order of conditions are conducting work, why don't you inform them that they really should have gone to the commission first?
I think as far as I know, SFTA does comply when we know that we're in a wetland area. We just don't operate there.
Can I
Yeah, Carol, go ahead.
make a comment? I thought all the information that Seth put together was really interesting to see what other towns are doing. And I think I think it's helpful to understand realistically the constraints that SFTA is under, and the way people perceive, kind of paperwork. Seth, one thing I said at the last meeting, I don't know if you were there, was, I would like to see SFTA working in closer alignment with the commission, and maybe that could solve some of these problems in the sense that I think it seems like a great idea to come up with a running list, even if it's voluminous, of all the changes, all the trail work that has to be done. And I thought, even if you came into a meeting every other month and said, this is our list, we
Mhm.
could potentially expedite some of that. You know what I mean? So that you might come to us every other month and say, there's these 3 wetland areas, and, we know something has to be done. And then we can kind of help you through the process in a more expeditious way. Because I hear that what you're saying is, it's like, oh no, we have to fill out this paperwork, and nobody enjoys doing paperwork. And that makes a lot of sense. But I think it would be great if SFTA was working, closely with Concom in that kind of role, so that when people came to SFTA, they felt like you were kind of the bridge to Concom.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was trying to achieve through some of my suggestions. One of them that I thought was really powerful was having, I don't know if you saw the screenshot of the records of the trail work. Having that today would give you so much more insight
Yeah.
into what's going on. It's just that, just having a tally, anytime the commission could go, we could, I suggested, an annual or biannual or maybe more frequently review with the commission about all of the trail work that's been done. And the reason that I really do kind of insist that it'll be much more effective if it's that way, rather than you collect a list of 2Bs and then review them and then do them, is because a lot of stuff gets done out there. So either we're going to do it or somebody else is going to do it. And the longer it sits there, the more likely somebody else will do it. We don't have really control over what a lot of people do. Sometimes it's on private land and people will just go and clear the trails themselves. I had a specific picture on a trail near where I live. It was right on the border of wetlands, and some big pines had come down, and eventually someone just come and cut them. So, and there's the other aspect of just, there's 100, it's estimated to close to 100 miles of trails. Especially seasons like the past one, you really have a group of, SFTA is just a handful of people doing trail maintenance. And then, the other people that are doing maintenance is, that I know of, it's still not a lot of people. You probably have like 20, 30 people maintaining 100 miles of trails. And, it's not about not wanting to or not liking paperwork. It's really just about it being a barrier. It's that you have to do it. It's kind of one of those things. It's you're out there, you're working, you finally got an afternoon where you could do it. Oh, I forgot to file the form. And so you'll just not do it, is what will happen. Not because you don't want to, it just won't. It's just it's another thing. It's putting a barrier in front of the work, which is, a large enough feat in itself. So maybe you'll submit them sometimes, but sometimes forget. And so work will just go undone. And I tried to point out a lot of places in the trails where, when work does go undone, that's much more detrimental to the trail than if, we went in and possibly were not ideal with our clearing practices.
I guess I'm making the suggestion to the commission for us to consider whether there's a way for SFTA to come to us, and then we essentially somehow help them handle the paperwork, if you know what I mean. And
Yes,
maybe if they
it's-
come, maybe if they come with specific list of things that we ask, like a photo, where is it, and we have an opportunity within the next, I don't know, few weeks or something to do a site visit and do a series of them, and then kind of pre-approve a series of things that have to get done. I don't know. I'm just trying to think about a good way to expedite
Yeah,
it.
but as a commissioner, I just want, are we trying to distinguish, there's a list of things under 14. If we narrow the focus, it seems to be the issue of just, if a tree has fallen across the trail, or there are branches sticking over the trail, it's really under that section in the 14 where it's really just clearing the treadway of obstacles, at least I'm limiting it to clearing the treadway of obstacles. We're not talking about erosion controls. There's just brushing the airspace. And then there's the issue of how to move any material. So if there's a tree across the trail, I mean, it seems if I understand it right from Seth and even the practicality, if I see a trail with a tree across it and people start then navigating around it and whatever else, I personally would feel like it's that somehow the idea of just clearing a tree from the actual trail treadway itself with the general guideline of whether it's just moved to the side versus, so we don't have to worry about where they're going to put it. And even though it might be in a wetland or in a buffer, it's still in that area, and that they can clear the overhead branches. That kind of activity, I think people should just be able to do as they meet it, as they see it. They could report it back to us. But the idea of having to go through, I guess I probably feel differently than some others, the idea that we have to have people report back to us to clear a tree that's fallen across the trail, and then we give them approval and tell them how to do it, versus the fact that we just, because I think in the meanwhile, a lot of stuff just happens and people tramp around the sides, that we're better off just letting them do it and try that out and see whether it does work or whether we do see things that don't go well. And I would rather experiment with just giving them the permission and just report afterwards what they've done.
Okay, I was going to go there as well. And before I get into that, I wanted to say to Carol that the idea that you floated, Carol, was actually an idea that I proposed at the April 1st meeting, the last time we talked about this, that Forest and Trails come to us in the spring and have some sort of a foretelling of parts of town where they know that there's going to be work or there already is work, and fill out the form and have it cover multiple spots or multiple acres or what have you, and have the form, of course, have an agent review those areas before the work takes place, but then have the form alive, if you will, for spring and summer or even into fall. And
but that presumes you know where things are going to fall down.
Neil, can I chime in?
Sure,
I wasn't finished. If I could please finish. To Michael's point, it was a suggestion I was going to make something similar this evening, which is that, but I hesitated because I wasn't sure if Section 14 was getting tossed out the window. That's kind of the way I have been reading things, that people didn't want to use the form. So my suggestion was going to be that I see 2 or 3 items that are listed under Section 14 that we could amend the order to take those 3 or 2 items off that list and have those be very specifically spelled out as things that can be done without prior notification.
But should be, but I would add to that, but should be, there should be some kind of post notification mechanism. And I think that precisely is, I just shared my screen here because it seems like there's confusion. That is the proposal, that these very minor changes be allowed without notification, nothing beyond that.
But so one thing I am concerned about.
Courtney, hold on, because Kelly, I think, has really been trying to get some word in there for about 5 minutes. So, and then we'll come to you. Thank you.
I was quite relieved, though, at what Jean and Michael said, which I was going to point out that the order of conditions requires this form a month prior to any action.
Yeah, that has to be changed too.
When Seth gets a call or a trail forks notification that his tree is down across a trail someplace in town, I don't think you want us to come in, submit a form, and wait a month before dealing with that tree across the trail. The idea is not to get rid of Section 14, is to do exactly what Jean was saying. We, from the beginning, were specific about 3 specific subsections of 14 having to do with branches and the just the top of the trail, no erosion control or anything like that, that you want us, I think, to deal with as quickly as we can. And that's the only change we're asking for. And Seth offers a much better reporting system to you so you know what's going on.
Okay. Courtney?
I agree with the general gist of what's been proposed. One concern is that, so this order, is this going to apply to just any old person? So it's one thing, I think, for the commission to say, Seth is in charge. He has a fairly good idea, if we give these guidelines, like you can only cut the log that's in the treadway and you can place it on the side, not in the lake, or whatever guidelines we come up with. But, I guess part of the concern is that, we have people out there that are doing this willy-nilly. Are we gonna be able to bring those people into the fold? Are we gonna make sure that those people are experienced and know what they're doing, wandering the woods with their chainsaws? I guess, Seth, is it your hope that most of the work will then be done by SFTA, as soon as possible, and that's going to discourage people from taking matters into their own hands? Because my concern is that, people are being great, we can do all this maintenance and we just have to let the commission know afterwards. But let's be real, that's also kind of the work is done, why should I bother telling them? And then we might have people willy-nilly like, great, I cut all this brush, I'm going to dump it into this vernal pool that they don't know is a vernal pool because it's dry. And they're like, look, I made a wildlife habitat. So I guess I just want to make sure that we address that aspect of it in the plan as to who's doing the work, how do we kind of make the guardrails narrow enough that people aren't going to get into trouble.
Right, and that exactly, I kind of regret not going through the presentation, because a lot of these points were in there. From our conversations, I recognize that is the problem, that people don't know that they need to do things in a certain way. And my proposal was that the permission without notification be only given to SFTA, but SFTA also takes a more active role in education and public outreach.
So
Somebody-
if I can, please
sorry.
let me comment. I just sort of been waiting a little bit. My initial sort of dialogue or monologue around that was really because I think that the last time when you guys came before us, it was, this order prevents us from being able to do what we want to do when we want to do it. And there was obvious, reaction to that. And I recognize in kind of looking at the proposal again, which I looked at when it first came in, that the sort of the emphasis you're trying to place. And I think that's something, I think it's a valuable emphasis. I think we could, because in my mind, the idea, and somebody mentioned, it may have been you, Seth, the idea that if you come to us after the fact with like a log of the work that was done under the sort of pre-authorization, if it's some subset of what's in section 14, and you come to us and we have a chance to periodically review it, both, in a meeting versus, or in the field, we can feed back to you, okay, well, when you do this kind of thing, maybe we should do it like this instead of like that. Then even though maybe in a single instance, there's something that isn't exactly the way we want it with jurisdictional areas, over time, you get better at it in terms of work in jurisdictional areas. We get more confident that you're doing it in the way that we feel comfortable with. And so it becomes a real iterative, sort of self-reinforcing process. And I like that. And I do think that having better tracking and you being willing as SFTA to take point on, sort of being a conduit to this kind of work for the commission, I think is also valuable. Because I think you're right. Some people just go out and do whatever they want. And if there's a way to sort of mitigate against that, and while we still have the kind of insight, which I think is the biggest thing for us, we don't want bigger sort of work. Like, I mean, we're not talking about bridges tonight, but I think that's that might be a bridge too far. But the point being that I think there is, in this kind of a setup, there's a way for us to carve off some of this really routine sort of emergency type of work that gets reported to us after the fact. I think I could support that.
Absolutely.
So I, just to round out what I had suggested earlier, if we were to agree on this, to amend the order to take 2 or 3 of the pieces of number 14 out of number 14, I would like them to, those pieces to show up elsewhere in the order,
13.
the following are exempt from notification, but to flesh them out to be as specific as we possibly can, so that there's right there in the order, there are some best practices spelled out right in the conditions.
And Kelly, you said 13, but 13 is a complete, just no notifications necessary. I think we'd want to craft something which is this idea that no advance notice is necessary, but periodically, SFTA is authorized. Periodically, there will be, a report to the commission on the work that's been done, and and that. So I think building a very specific set of circumstances around these particular exceptions, I think, is the way for us to go. Sort of a hybrid between 13 and 14.
Could we give you a motion for the next meeting?
You mean now, or you mean before the next meeting?
No, we can't draft it now. I mean, you have described some parameters, and what I'm suggesting to get something voted on and done, that it might most efficiently be if we were to draft a specific amendment that incorporates what you're talking about, so that you can look at it and vote on it.
And I think that's a good idea. And one thing, I just want to go back to Jean's original suggestion that she alluded to from April. I actually like I'm not sure I like that, although that's better than a total exemption. I don't like the idea of them coming and saying, we're going to be doing work in these areas, because again, we don't know what those areas are. I do think, though, that if we exempt whatever these 2 or 3 things are, make it so that there's a log of that activity and reported periodically after the fact. And there's a motion that Kelly's suggesting we craft around that. I mean, I think that's okay. I don't know what Jean, Michael, Courtney, Carol, what you guys think about that, but
I think it's a great idea, and it'll be a minor adjustment. So
One thing I would say about the log is that I think if it's only reviewed annually or biannually, it's too much for the commission to even kind of pay attention to it. So at least initially, if we're going to start this process, it would just be a good idea to do it like every other month.
I agree.
And then tell us what you've done. And then a lot of us are out in conservation lands all the time. We can walk down those trails, take a look, and, to the point that Courtney made, start giving feedback as needed on anything. I think
I agree. Every other month would be great.
Didn't Seth have like in one of the documents that was sent, there was an example of like a database. I mean, if he's proposing that this is going to be like a database, and he's just constantly updating it, we can set up our own times to go over it, or we can just review it at our leisure.
Well, the
Right.
data that he illustrated for us was from Trail Forks, right, Seth? And
Right.
it doesn't, I looked at it, it doesn't name specific spots, but maybe I missed something. Does it pinpoint the spot on a map?
Yeah, can you see the picture here? I'm sharing my screen there.
Yeah. If you could make it larger, that'd be great.
Sure.
Just a comment, because I do a lot of those. It's a real-time database. If something's cleared, we can take a picture of it, we submit it. It'll indicate the exact trail, the exact location on the trail, and there'll be a photo. And we've got a place we can put in description.
That looks really
And if
cool.
people want to subscribe to it, they can subscribe, and they can get the notification when somebody submits a problem, and then can get the notification when the problem has been resolved. Or you can just look at it on your leisure whenever you want to.
I still think, though, I think this is great. And for those that are sort of more techie, I think jumping in there whenever they feel they want to have a look is good. I still do think that Carol's suggestion is a good one, which is maybe on a bi-monthly basis to start, and then we can always make it less frequent as we sort of build our kind of rhythm with it. Having SFTA come and we discuss kind of some of the work, or, you pick out some prime examples that we want to kick around, or whatever that is. Or if, somebody on conservation notices an issue and they bring it up in that routine meeting or routine sort of session we have, I think that would be the best approach, at least to begin with.
Or maybe we're just saying, awesome, great job.
Yeah, exactly. I would love nothing more.
About whose work you are keeping track of. I wouldn't want to make it, I wouldn't want Seth or SFTA to feel that they had this burden of monitoring absolutely everything or reporting on absolutely everything. So I'm a little bit fuzzy about, I guess what I want to say is, we are making this agreement with SFTA, we'll develop language, what have you. I think if you do two things, you stick to our agreement, which I know you intend to do, and back to the education point, if you find opportunities to educate how to do the work or something about the rules and the order of conditions, things like that, we welcome that, absolutely. But I just don't want you folks to feel burdened, like you're responsible suddenly for how the work gets done by these people who just choose to do it without caring if it matters to anybody.
Yeah,
Well,
certainly we can't be responsible for them.
right. And, I guess I would say in response to that is that I think what Seth's been talking about and what SFTA is talking about is trying to do some of that outreach because they care about trails. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And so, it's an incremental improvement over the current situation where if they don't do the work because it's in a jurisdiction and they don't want to bother with the paperwork, that somebody else is going to come along and do it in a way that's really not, well informed. So I don't mind putting the burden on SFTA as long as they're okay with it. And, and that's that thing.
I just had one other thought. I would love to see SFTA branch out into other aspects of trail maintenance that do require, some learning because, logs across the trail are the obvious obstacle, but there's so much that other work that can be done. So if you're feeling like you'd like to get into other things, I noticed that in the Weston document, they are authorizing invasives removal and practices for how to do that correctly. Why don't we get into that in the future?
We're itching to get into bridges.
Yeah. Rafe, did you have a comment?
Oh, thanks so much. And I really appreciate everybody's comments. I was just going to suggest that the order, as someone suggested earlier, would really just apply to work done by SFTA or
Yes.
under the supervision of an SFTA director. So when we have trail days and stuff, or if somebody comes to us and says we want to do it, then we make sure they do it in the right way. Obviously, what people do on their own will have a much harder time controlling, and this order wouldn't apply to it. But because we're eyes and ears and out on the trail, if we see people that are doing things that doesn't look right, we can document those, go back and fix them, or make those people aware of it if we know who did it.
Great. I think it's a good idea.
Me
All right.
too.
So Kelly, are you going to take it to on yourself to craft some language with folks from SFTA?
SFTA will. I might do some drafting, but it will be
Okay.
Is there a possibility we could get that taken up in 2 weeks at the next meeting?
Ask Elizabeth.
Okay.
It'll probably be at like 11 p.m. or something.
Well,
9 o'clock is the earliest time I have available.
we'll talk about it.
Okay.
8:05, guys.
All right. My kids are coming in to get squeezes. All right.
I'll just
So
make one more comment.
please,
I just
quickly,
wanted
but
to
yes.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate your time and everything. And if it's not clear, my motivation was really stemmed from realizing that SFTA and Concom are not in sync. And there was a particular SFTA board member that would say they would have to plug their ears when certain comments get made. And that always really bothered me. Like, why would someone have to say that? So we should be really in sync with Concom. And I love this idea of building a better relationship with Concom. That's really where this all is coming from, not just getting blanket permission, because you could just ignore things if that's all you wanted to.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate it because I think like after hearing kind of your thinking it through and kind of coming at it from this other perspective, I think it comes through loud and clear that that's what you're trying to do. And so we appreciate it as well because, we all are trying to do the same stuff. And so being able to work together is going to be great.
Exactly.
We love the conservation lands too, and we really appreciate all the work that SFTA does. We just don't have the person power to do it, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, so ponder the 9 o'clock time slot, but we're happy to take it up when you're ready.
Or send a draft ahead of time anyway, so.
Yeah, for sure.
We can see what we could do to help
Okay.
move this forward.
All right. Well, thank you. Let's jump to our next thing. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye,
Thanks
Kelly.
all.
Thank you, Rafe. All right. So we have 211 Farm Road, and if I'm right about that, we are continuing it again. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I am going to open the 211 or reopen the 211 Farm Road hearing and move that we continue it until.
Do you want the 17th or July 1st, Joyce?
July 1st.
July 1st, how about 7:30?
Prime time.
Wow.
Okay, that's the motion.
Needs more than 15 minutes, though.
Sure.
Okay, half hour?
Yeah.
Okay, that is the motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Carol?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
I could get used to this 5-person thing. It's like bam, 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 bam. All right. Motion carries. I want a gavel for this part of it. All right. Let's see. So we've got about 7 minutes before our RDA. What shall we discuss next? I'd love to know what's going on with Coolidge Crossing and or 41 North Main 31 Hunting, if there's any updates there.
They only deliberated on Coolidge so far, right?
Right. Oh, should I say something? You, or do you want?
By somebody, yes, please.
You sent an email summary. I thought that was.
Okay, the people saw the email. Essentially, they're gonna, they didn't vote for a final vote, but they voted that their direction will be approving the project with conditions. They went through some set of issues and conditions that'll include some of the concerns that were brought up, but a lot of it will be reflected in the new plans where they've revised them for some landscaping, for wildlife and other kind of things. And we'll get to see, there'll be a draft that they'll send out at some point, and on next June 10th is when they'll meet to craft most of it. And they're going to vote probably by the June 18th, they have to vote one way or another. That's the end of the open period. So, so there'll be something there, and there'll be some help based on what we've talked about towards what an NOI and some of the issues we wanted to see. And then we'll get to stack it up again and then I'll review it again during the NOI process, which I imagine will happen soon afterwards. Because they'll have they'll have an actual permit. The wording seems to be based on what they've already got in the file. It's a little unclear to me how much one can shape the actual wording of the conditions anew, but I guess there'll be some tweaking based on the draft that the ZBA prepares for its next meeting. That's it on 41.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
About Coolidge? I do this often with Coolidge. I'm trying to facilitate getting the jump on getting our independent consultants started. So just to be clear, I can't even broach the subject with the applicant until they refile the notice. Is that correct?
I guess you can broach it probably, but we can't really act on anything until the hearing is opened.
Yeah, we have no mechanism. Yeah, we have no mechanism to
Right.
request the funds.
I mean, to some extent, whether you want to informally see that since they didn't get to review they didn't see the proposals last time, one could check from BCS and maybe the others that their proposal still holds. And whether there's going to be any changes in that. We expect, let's say, the NOI to be filed. Let's say you could check with them. You could check with the applicant when they expect to file it, and then you could check whether the proposals for consulting will still be valid when they start opening it. Might be a preparatory step.
Okay.
And one could ask the applicant if they had any particular comments on that proposal for BSC, which is the one we liked if it still holds.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So if you say that, you said the ZBA is working on the conditions. So one of the concerns I had was that the scale of the project is such that that's one of the main reasons they've pushed so far into the buffer. It's barely out of the buffer in various places. And I just think that at the current scale, the project will definitely have detrimental impacts on the wetlands. So one thing I'm wondering about is once the ZBA puts together their conditions, is there any flexibility there at all? Or are we just basically locked into the scale of the project, the location of the buildings, and all we can do is try to get the landscaping improved?
Well,
Probably
it-
true. Why is
well,
it sense?
in theory, in complete theory, you could deny the NOI because you would assess that the scale of the project itself and whatever the outgrowths of that would have significant adverse impacts. I mean, that's really what we tried to do with the fields, right? Or what we did, we denied it, and they
Right.
fought and everything else. I think, but that's a very difficult case to make when there's no actual work in resource areas. When it's just buffer zone and it's just the State Wetland Protection Act, it's a really, really, really tough thing to get. It's just tough. I think it's almost impossible to
Well,
get them to
plus,
really change the scale of the project significantly.
yes, we could do it, theoretically, although we got some changes, even though they weren't in the resource area at the fields, but that was also because of the water and sewage issues.
Yeah.
This one's not going to have water and sewage issues like most any other project in town, given where
That's
that's
right.
coming from Framingham and going to Natick with the septic. So in theory, right, it's only a matter, or we could have some tough negotiations, but I would say that it would be, I would say as a practicality, the project, ZBA is not going to change it. And we can deal with this issue when we have the NOI, but nothing's going to change in the project by the time it comes to us as an NOI, and maybe it's not appropriate to talk about anything more than that until it's open before us. But the ZBA is not going to change the scale and the location or any of those factors. for
Did
the
they
project.
understand our concerns about that?
Sure. They would say that it's up to us, but they don't, that they didn't get enough concern from their peer review or others, so therefore they're not changing it. And there'll be nothing reflected in the conditions other than about that particular issue. So it's up to the NOI process to deal with that, which is the way it would probably be anyway.
Okay. Let's jump to our RDA for.
I'll just say one other thing on 3141.
Sure, and we can come back to it too if you want to address it
Oh,
later.
no, that's just going to be if people want to tune in, June 9th is the next ZBA hearing on that one there. And there are many more conditioned issues to go into that one because of the water supply and septic issues. So that will be a much more extensive effort, but that's mainly on those issues. And the wetland stuff is hard to say because we never had a delineation and such. So that's one of the things they just know that it's a gap. And there'll be issues and they haven't decided yet how they're going to even orient themselves as to whether they're granting it or not granting it. That's part of the first meeting, is to get the readings of that. So June 9th will be interesting in that sense alone.
Okay.
That's it.
Michael, I have another question, sorry, for this one, which is, at town meeting, there was a vote to transfer the ability to purchase 31 Hunting to Unity Farm. And is that in any way impacting what's the process, or is the process just going to continue forward until the town exercises that?
It probably will continue forward, except if they decide that issue of control of the properties is a basis for
Denial.
not even approving the permit. And it's unclear to me whether if you do not grant the permit for certain reasons like that, and it gets appealed and it gets overturned, whether you then get a chance to write the conditions later, or whether even if you're voting not to give it a permit, that to protect yourself, you have to write all the conditions now. I don't know whether you get to revisit the conditions issue if your voting to not grant the permit is overturned. So that's a wrinkle that I haven't found the answer to or had the time to figure out. So we don't know whether they'll still have to write the conditions even if they decide not to grant it or not.
Okay.
But that'll come up.
All right. Yeah, we can talk more about it after. All right. So we've got this RDA for Mass Coastal Railroad Vegetation Management.
And there was an email today. Elizabeth, can you reiterate what the email said from Mr. Lewis?
Basically Tom said that he wasn't able to do a site visit with Joyce, and if we wanted to continue the RDA without him, we could, or we could continue it to our next hearing. So there's been no new material given to us.
Joyce, are you there? Yeah. Do you feel like if we continued this to the next meeting, that's reasonable given how much work he still has yet to do in delineating out there?
Well, I don't know if he has marked anything and simply hasn't scheduled a site visit, or if he has to mark it and then schedule a site visit. I wasn't clear from the email. So I don't know the answer to that, if whether or not he'd be ready by the next meeting.
What, Elizabeth, I'm sorry, back to the email. There was something in what he said, the last part of the last sentence about,
Let me see.
I was asking if they could proceed without us checking on the delineation. Is that something I read wrong, or?
Let me see. Let me find it here.
So basically he's asking if we aren't able to act on his request, act on the, I don't know, determination of applicability on our own, could we continue it till its next meeting?
Yeah, that's what he asked. If the commission is unable to act on my RDA application tonight, then please ask them to continue this until the next regularly scheduled hearing.
Well, I would suggest that he did ask for the next regular meeting, but, oh, well, I was just gonna say we push it to two meetings from now, just to give him more time and Joyce to get together and go out there and look at it.
But they're going to start to do the work soon, if I remember last time. So I think it's risky to push it out 2 meetings versus at least push it to just next meeting. In case he accelerates it to get ready to do it. I wouldn't want to miss it. I would suggest we just push it to 1 meeting and take it and see what he's got done by then.
Elizabeth, can you please work with me on the email to him next week?
Yes,
Okay, so let's, I guess, put it on the next meeting's agenda.
it would be at 9:30.
What, 11:30 wasn't available?
It might be by the end of the night.
It's a good one. All right. Well, if that's the case with this, then I think we've got some space to roam here and try to get this other stuff done that we've got, because the next NOI is at 8:45.
Do we need to make a motion?
We're going to stay focused.
Do we need to make a motion to move the RDA?
I don't think so. It's not a hearing.
Okay, we
Hearing.
publicly post it, that's why.
I usually put in the minutes that the request for determination was continued to whenever it was continued.
Okay. We don't do a vote. I can't remember what we do on the RDAs. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Since it's rare.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so should we just jump into things that are related and that are in the discussions? Do we have more minutes?
I have no minutes. I haven't gotten to them.
Okay. We just talked about Coolidge Crossing and Main Street hunting, mass
We have a
mosquito
warrant.
control. Sorry, go ahead.
We have a warrant.
Oh,
Just
you know,
wait.
because it's bolded, I never see it. We do have a warrant, and it's a wonderful one. It's $480 for conservation works.
What is that? What is that?
That's the, we talked about this, I think, at the last meeting. It's the remainder of the money from this fiscal year for the folks that are doing the inventory.
Oh, okay, sure. Gotcha. Just wanted to check.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was like some vendor named Conservation Works, which I like. It's snappy, but
I was hoping it was for snacks.
But is does that mean it bills out that entire line item of special stuff? Because it's only $400. I thought we had $1,400 left in that line item.
That I don't know the answer to. I know that we paid them we paid them the rest of their fee several months ago. And so the 480 is all that I don't know what the other special money comes from.
There's a special line account, Michael. I had to ask Deb for it. I can tell you the balance. I'll email it to you. I can look it up, but it was more than the 480 in the account.
I know. What was the other amount? What was the other?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Because there was $1,400. There was $1,140 left in that thing, in that special projects. I guess we got to find out what that is to understand whether we're missing on something. Because if we're only spending $420 on special projects, that leaves another almost $700.
We'll have to ask Kelly, and I'll check with you next week, Elizabeth, on whether the rest of the balance was paid to Conservation Works.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get that straight, because otherwise, well, I guess not critical for that budget thing, but we just got to work it out this month. Okay.
Okay. So the warrant, no minutes. We've talked about Coolidge in 4131. What about mass mosquito control?
Well, that's Cindy's project, and she's not here yet.
Okay. All right. What else do we have? You had some site issues or questions that came up, Jean.
Oh, right. I got an answer by text to one of my questions. One of my questions was, has the select board made changes to the process of making appointments? And the answer I got was no, their discussion has been stalled. But I was reminded that everyone remains a member unless and until someone else steps in and replaces them.
Or they formally resign.
Right. But we're talking about you, Courtney, and Cindy.
All right.
Well, we still don't know, actually. Did you get a response from Cindy, Michael, about whether or not she wants to?
It was unclear. I don't have a definitive response. I've applied, and I assume Courtney did.
Yep.
So you've applied. I need to write letters, correct? Because we
You
moved
don't have to, but it would help at some point. You are approved to write.
Depends on what I say.
Yeah, right.
I sent you the template, Neil, that we used in the past. So you can
Can it just be one?
Yes.
Well, we already voted on it, so you have to write
Have
what
to
we
do
voted
it.
on.
Can it
Okay.
just be one letter for all three of you?
Well, for all those who would want.
We were waiting to see what Cindy said.
Let me do it as separate letters. It doesn't matter. And then there's some sort of administrative separation for the select board. Thank you for the template, Elizabeth. I did get it, but yeah, I will get it in there. All right.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was
Yep.
for you, actually, to update us, or anybody besides me, because I have nothing to update on the agent search.
Me,
Has it been listed?
little old me.
It
Can you
was
list the places that it was posted at for
Yes.
sure?
Yes. But
So it did not end up being posted in MMA
Why?
oversight.
Well, why don't we do it now?
It will be done.
Oh, okay.
It just was not done.
is David going to do it, or should we do it?
He will do it.
Okay, what about the other places?
Yeah, it's all been posted. It's been posted in all 4 venues, but it has the slightly wrong salary. I'm not ready to just jump in and say, oh, change it again, please. Because it's only $1.40 per hour difference, something like that.
It's basically, do they all have the June 25th date?
Yep.
The 4 places?
Yep.
Okay. So that's Mass DEP, 2 wetland associations, and the MACC.
Right.
The newspaper ad will, though that doesn't really, is more of a formality, we'll get in the paper next week. And it'll be at least the 14 days before the due date, so it meets the regulatory, the town's policy requirements.
Right.
That's the question, is whether we're going to look into Indeed or some other, I guess we should talk afterwards about whether we do Indeed or Somebody Tracker or whatever those places are. Since we've only had one applicant so far.
Right. So we've had one applicant. She was actually on the meeting earlier. It looks like she's dropped off. So I think she doesn't have agent experience, but she has some other relevant experience. So we'll have to talk about her. The other thing I'd tell you is I told you I was going to go talk to the select board. That's next week. So I'm going to go again, make the case for at some point sooner than later, making this a benefited more than 19-hour position. So we'll see what they say, what their feedback is. So
Would you like us to be there?
I'm always there in case I need to get into a tussle.
I still haven't looked at your tussle.
Our tough guy. He used to be on ice hockey, play ice hockey. What was the guy called?
What's that?
In ice hockey teams, there's the enforcer.
The enforcer. Yeah, that's Courtney. She waits in the shadows and leaps out at the appropriate moment.
Yeah. I wait with my flower eyes.
The general comment that I'll make, one general comment, last comment on agent potential is this issue of how we deal with somebody who doesn't have direct agent experience and how we do training, how we get it funded, to what extent somebody works for a little bit less and we basically pay for training and they put in their time versus the fact that there was a slot in the application form for the position to the town where you can indicate that you need some funds for training. But that whether we're going to be given the seemingly possible shortage of people who actually have been agents, that there's a reasonable chance we'll be dealing with people who have a lot of good experience and obviously the ability, who will need some training.
Yep.
We'll have to figure that out.
Okay. Anything else on stuff you wanted to address, Jean?
No, thank you.
Okay. Do we still have stuff to talk about with regard to, well, just violation 68 Maple Street?
We do, no, not regarding 68 Maple. Nothing on that one. But there is a new letter in the Dropbox, the most recent letter from Mr. Dowse in the Dropbox. I don't think it wasn't shared with the whole commission, so it's in there now.
What options do we have for somebody who claims nothing's going wrong?
And then, and then we, at the last meeting, I believe, and then we confirmed that today, you and I, Neil, that Elizabeth is going to call them and ask if we can have access to the site.
I'm glad you confirmed that today because I thought I was already doing that. So I called him this week and have not heard back.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Good.
So
I think, we may not hear back and get invited. I think that it was important that we made that phone call anyway.
So I know that there was some outreach on the forest management side, and the person who was assigned is no longer assigned. And where does that stand?
I was going to take that on, and I haven't gotten to it yet. I apologize, but see if I can get to that next week. Finding the forester who is now responsible for that particular stewardship plan, and seeing if we can get somebody out there.
Okay.
I also have to get some more aerial photos. I haven't done that yet.
Yeah. Did you see that I sent everybody the link to Pictometry? Yeah, I think if you explore that, that might be possibly really good photos.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? We've got time to kill. It feels a little strange.
It is strange.
it is.
AAs, sure. It's just these two.
Just these two. We have a bunch more, but they're all in the other meeting. But Joyce cranked through them today if she wants to
Right.
holler them out.
Uh,
No, we do. So 35 Great Rock was a well deepening. 80 South Main was soil testing. We had 92 Lake, which was a tank replacement. 8 Mill, I think that was installation, right, Joyce, from soil testing?
yes.
And I don't remember the rest off the top of my head.
That was pretty good.
All the work is outside of our jurisdiction.
Yes.
Was the well repair because they ran out of water, or we don't know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know a little background on that. They're not completely dry, but they don't have much volume.
Interesting to know how deep it is, but whatever. It's just this whole.
Well, I'm sure the person in the Board of Health that you know could give you some information, because that problem is with a new well, they're not going to meet the setbacks from the neighbors or their own septic, I guess. So they're really hoping that deepening it is going to work.
Oh,
So,
yep. Try not to bother. Try to keep things a little separate here.
Okay. I'm just looking at the agenda. Is there the request for a certificate of compliance? Is that something we need? Do we have to take it up at the time it's slotted?
I did not get to that.
Well, we can't take it up now anyway, Joyce is saying, because she was not able to make a site visit yet.
Okay. All right. So then it's something we're not going to do tonight anyway. Okay. And are any of these other NOIs that are on the agenda for tonight, are they continuations or are we going to continue any of them, or we're going to deal with them tonight?
Everything else that's on there, we're going to deal with tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe we need another poetry reading.
I was going to say, I'm going to break out Kropotkin and read more about mutual aid theory.
That seems appropriate for any meeting.
That's right.
Time for the 7th inning stretch.
Yeah.
Can we actually
Smoke them if you got them.
let's see.
We could do calisthenics.
Can we go
Do we
back?
have it?
Can I
Sorry.
can we go back to the discussion, like a subset of the discussion that we had with Forest and Trails, and discuss not the modifications to the order that we talked about, which I would agree would be minor modifications, but discuss, Kelly has asked me several times to let him know if we will consider making bridge building and trail relocation part of section 14. And if so, would that be a minor or a moderate modification to the order of conditions? And it's a tough call, I think.
Well, it's two separate questions though. One is would we include it in 14, and the other is if we do, is that a minor or moderate, right?
Yes, I'm not asking the first question. I'm asking if we would consider it, then does it require a hearing, or just is it just a minor?
What do people think? I have my opinion, but
We have to look at the regulations, unless you've got them memorized.
in terms of
It spells out how to determine minor versus moderate.
I don't have it memorized, but isn't it say something like, it's sort of likelihood of adverse impact kind of thing? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's the following may require an amended order of conditions under moderate. A decrease in distance from the resource area, increase in potential for erosion, decrease in the size of the no alteration area, alteration of landform, change in the size and location of structure and appurtenances. I mean, it kind of falls under that. Increase in amount of vegetation removed, it falls under that. and activity beyond the limit of work. It's, yeah, to build a bridge is beyond the limit of work. It's in the resource area. So if we were to consider his proposal to make those part of number 14, I would think it would require a hearing, me personally.
I could believe the new one might do that. The relocation of existing trails might not, but I guess since we're possibly, if we're gonna do them together, we can deal with
But
it.
if it's a relocation of a trail in a jurisdictional area, then doesn't that include brush removal and so on and so forth, potential erosion?
Yeah.
I mean, the only difference is essentially we have to go through posting it and we have to notify all the abutters.
No, we don't have to notify all the abutters. I think if Elizabeth and I look back in the records to see how it was done before when we're talking about conservation land, we don't, we don't have to notify the whole town. Green cards.
So the main thing is just the expense of posting a hearing.
Right.
Okay, not a big deal either way. To some extent.
And the delay. It's quicker.
I'm not worried about, in this case, I don't see it much of an issue, so I could see us erring on the side of being more conservative but to me, it's more that, so I don't see it a big deal that we have to make it open a hearing and do it again. So the real issue, if we have time to discuss, is where people sit on even considering these things.
Well, I mean, what do people think about considering these things? We have 7 minutes.
I'm not in favor of it.
Me neither.
I'm in favor of requiring a notice of intent for either of those things.
Courtney, were you going to say something?
I agree with Jean.
I would probably, I would consider putting them in there and then exercising what the order of conditions now has is that once we get the prior notification, once we get the notification of work, notice to perform the work, it says that the commission may require an RDA or NOI for any proposed project if it's deemed to have an impact to the resource area associated buffer zone. So I would consider putting them both in there so that we could see if there's some minor ones that we would allow, and then exercise the condition for an NOI for cases that we feel we need to do that. So I would put it, I would consider putting them in.
I just, you know, if I just think about if I were the agent and somebody came to me on a private property proposal and said, I have a little stream on my property. I'd like to build a trail down to it, and I'd like to build a bridge across it. I wouldn't say, let me come out and look at it first, and I'll tell you what kind of application. That's work in a resource area. So to me, it was to be just clearly a notice of intent. So I'm saying that we review a bridge or a trail relocation first under the notice to perform work. It makes more work for everybody. It makes it take longer too. The notice of intent is not a burden to forests and trails. They don't, you know, they do something very simplified as they have done in the past. And it's just a matter of timing, really. They don't have to pay the fee.
I think that in my mind, the bridge is more of a clear-cut example of something I would not want as part of section 14. The trail relocation, I don't know. I mean, I'm still inclined again, you know, depending on where it is it in the inner buffer zone? You know, where is it? What, you know, I think any of that kind of work should really go through the normal process, either of those.
What about the boardwalk they talked about? A boardwalk.
Well, if it's so in the existing order, if what's being proposed is a repair to an existing structure, then that's okay with just this simple form, the one-page form.
Right.
But if it's a new boardwalk, that's in a wetland. I would say it would need a notice of intent.
Sounds like if Carol would agree with you that we have enough people who feel that way, that we've done discussing it and we know that we won't do it. Even if I don't change my mind, I might be swayed, but like we've already decided, we don't have to talk anything more about it.
I mean, I think it should go through the NOI. I just think that, like, I think of the last time that we approved that new bridge over in, what is it, Perry Street? And I was walking there the following spring, and the trail that had been moved had water pouring down it. And I thought, we really, really need to carefully review these things if they're really close to the wetlands, or, you know. I guess that means.
Good deal. Okay.
Let's vote. Just
You
kidding.
can tell Kelly our answer.
No, look, I mean, if they have, you know, part of it is we do want to hear what they have to say. And so if they have some information that might, you know, alter people's opinion, then by all means, we should have the discussion with them, but it's always good to talk about it.
Well, and I think it's something to be discussed after we see how the trail business goes first.
Mhm. You mean like this new arrangement we're making? With
Yeah.
them? Yeah.
Like we wouldn't move on to step 2 until we make sure this arrangement works.
I mean, I really think that it's
And
only,
down the road.
I
Yeah,
think,
even if it went well, I would probably, even myself, for all I said before, I'd probably want the new one at least, not to be an NOI. So no matter what, no matter how well it went on the trails. So even though I'll change or contradict myself, change my.
You know, we reviewed a notice of intent for our own work. We do it all the time. We did it at Barber recently, where we wanted to periodically mow the wet meadow at the entrance to Barber every 2 years. And then we did an amendment to that order of conditions because we wanted to be able to add wood chips under the crabapple trees. So I mean, if we're doing it for our own work,
I might have to
we
pull.
expect everybody in town to do it for their own private property, I don't see, you know.
We're going to have to quote Steve Gaskin when he says, "We're all in unanimous whatever." I can't remember how we put it that we're all in unanimous consent or whatever it is, so we don't have to keep supporting it, whatever.
my father used to say we're in violent agreement.
Well, that's what I think he might have said that. Maybe that was what Steve said. But yes, I think we're there. And it's 8:45.
Great. Okay. Sorry, let me dig out this. Sort of caught flat-footed and sort of lulled into a false sense of something or other. Hold on just one second. Let me just read out this stuff. Okay. This is not a continuation, right? Before I start reading this thing.
It is not.
Thank you. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the Town of Sherborn is holding a public hearing at virtually at the Sherborn Town Hall, 19 Washington Street, Sherborn, Mass. at 8:45 p.m. on the 3rd day of June, 2021. The hearing is being held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetland Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 17, to consider a proposal by McIntyre Engineering and Septic Service for the replacement of a failed septic system at 32 Old Orchard Road, map 7, lot 20. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given an opportunity to speak at this hearing.
Dan McIntyre here representing the homeowners.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. Would you like me to share my screen with the plan, or is that?
Please.
Sure.
All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. So 32 Old Orchard, the homeowners are selling their home and it failed the Title V inspection. So we were retained to design a new septic system. This is about a 2-acre lot constructed in approximately 1964. It's a 4-bedroom house. The septic system is in the front, consisting of a septic tank, a leach pit, and some sort of an overflow from that leach pit. There's really no design available on it. The well is located in the backyard, so we're proposing to replace the system in the front yard. There were wetlands identified over toward I believe this is the east. This is a town-owned property right here. There's a wetland and pond associated there, which overflows into a stream that follows Old Orchard Road and goes under a culvert under the driveway. The buffer zone extends into the work area. See, we got the 50-foot buffer here, and excuse me, the 50-foot buffer associated with the stream, and then the 100-foot buffer takes the rest of the lot. Excuse me. We did a number of soil test pits here. It's quite ledgy. Right in here, we found high shallow bedrock. As we moved closer to the driveway and further from the wetlands, we did find some better soil suitable for supporting a septic system. So we're proposing to put it in here. As you can see, it's about the same distance from the wetlands as the cesspool, although we are working, the leaching trenches are going away from the wetland. This is kind of a unique as well, as in that the wetland is slightly up gradient of the work area. So we're protecting the work area with erosion controls here, and then along the opposite side of the driveway, since the driveway is going to be our construction access. And then we've got a kind of a limit of work barrier over here to trap any sediments that might go that way. And then just to identify for the contractor, just to not go any further in that direction. The work would, I think, would comply with the requirements for our request for determination for a septic replacement, but the area is in an estimated habitat area. So out of an abundance of caution, we filed an NOI, and we did a streamlined mesa review with Department of Fishes and Wildlife. And we have received their letter back, and they agree that this work would not involve any taking of rare wildlife. And I believe you did get a copy of that letter. So with that, I think I'd open it up to questions.
It's everything is in existing lawn, correct?
No, we are disturbing some understory of, there's some large pine trees right in here that we're taking down. So it's partially grass and then partially kind of, you know, wooded shrubs and pine needles and things in there. So when we're all done, we are going to be expanding the lawn slightly. We estimate about 900 square feet.
And in terms of alternatives analysis, you're not putting it on the other side of the house for some reason.
That's where the well is.
Okay.
So would you say the area that's not lawn that will become lawn because it's part of the system is just naturally vegetated? Was it maintained?
Let's see if I can, do we have any pictures of that?
I think you had a picture that shows it. It almost looks like it's wooded in front of the house.
6 big pine trees. Is that the one with 6 big pines?
Yeah, there's 6 big pines coming down. Yep.
I took some pictures of it and I posted it. I don't see it on the in the Dropbox though.
It's in the NOI. There's a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a picture of it in the front of the house.
Yeah.
On page 14 or whatever, 15 of the NOI.
Joyce or Dan, there's a view of a stream, and I couldn't tell on the map where the stream is in relation to the septic.
That's the stream that runs along parallel to Old Orchard Road.
Yep.
And then
So
goes under the driveway.
Is that near the front of the property then?
Yes. It's marked as drainage ditch
Yes.
in the site plan that he was showing us.
I see. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So Dan, you said of those pines that are in that photograph, which ones of them are coming down?
All of them.
Okay.
There's 6 of them that are coming down. For some reason, I've lost my screen and I can't see the drawing anymore, but
We can see it.
yeah, not sure how do I get it back though.
We're
Dan,
not going to
were
have
the
it.
pine
Could-
trees, were the pine trees just all basically within the area of where the septic system is going to be inside this 50-foot no disturb buffer area?
Yes.
It's outside of that 50 foot.
You're right, sorry.
Oh, it's
I
outside the
should've said
50 foot, yeah.
outside, but kind of in that square that surrounds the septic system.
Right.
Or at least the grading that goes off to the side there, since it's right by the driveway. Yeah, okay. So the only issue left for me is whether there's any for working in that kind of work in the outer buffer and cutting down trees, whether there's any mitigation that makes any sense, given, is there much of the 50-foot no alteration zone that's already altered that could be restored? Anybody looked at that issue of a little bit of mitigation where that's close to the wetlands?
You mean between the 50 and the drainage ditch, or between the 50 and the stream, for instance, seems like a good area.
I'll talk about any disturbed area that's near the wetlands. That might be more, that would be priority for some mitigation, is whether there's some altered area that's very close to the wetlands that could be left to go more natural, of sort of some equivalent area.
Dan, did you hear that question?
Yes, I did. Yeah. What are we mitigating?
Cutting down of the
Cutting
trees.
down the trees and the,
On all the natural, it's not fully natural, but it's somewhat natural buffer zone in the there, and
You're losing canopy.
to some extent, which
right.
whether there's some possible mitigation, even if it's less than the 900, since it would be, if it's close to the wetlands and in the no buffer zone, that's always a higher priority. Whether there's any areas that are already disturbed in the no buffer that we could be offered as mitigation.
There's none that's really apparent because we've got, along this area here is all undisturbed and is going to remain undisturbed. As we come through here, you've got that walking path along the wetlands. That's all in a wooded area over there. There's some lawn to the side of the house that gets you to the backyard. It's really the only access to the backyard.
Hmm.
So there's really no place to do any mitigation there.
Dan, I have a question. When I look at this picture of the stream, it looks like one side has lots of shrubs, but the other side doesn't. Has there been some clearing there or something? I mean, I was wondering if that might be an area where some more shrubs could be introduced, but it's hard to tell. It does look like there's a lot of leaves on the ground.
Yeah, there are. That's the, I think you're looking at the house side over there.
Probably.
Yeah.
Would there be an opportunity, for instance, to plant some trees, or is that completely, like, is there a canopy there?
It's a very wooded area there, yes.
Carol,
Okay.
are you talking about along where it's the caption is view of stream looking toward driveway culvert?
Yes, yeah. And if
Yeah.
you, like, if you're from the viewpoint of the camera to the left, it just looks less wooded and less.
It's pretty
Shrub.
shaded in there. This house is actually one street over from me, so I go by it all the time. It's pretty, there's a pretty well established tree canopy there. The other thing I'll tell you is, I remember mentioning to people that there's a lot of bloodroot at the head of this trail. This house is next to that little trailhead that lets into the Bailey Trail. There's a lot of bloodroot flowers in there and so some really nice native species. So I'd be reluctant to go in and do really much of anything in there.
Mm.
Can I just say, Dan, I feel like notices of intent are happening more and more for you than in the past. And
That's because you like them, I thought.
I do.
we love them. But because we don't have an agent, because things are kind of falling through the cracks a little bit, we typically try to orchestrate a site visit prior to the hearing for notices of intent. And it's not your responsibility, but maybe you could help us remember in the future.
Sure.
And another suggestion I have is, and this would be especially helpful tonight since some of us have never seen this parcel, I know that the plan has a lot of information on it, but if it's at all possible for you to put in, scallop line and a description of edge of wooded area, that's very helpful, wherever
Okay.
that occurs.
Yeah, it's faint there now. It's kind of a green line coming right through there. And then the red line is the proposed tree line right in there.
Yeah, can't see it.
Yeah, it's faint on the screen. Yeah.
I could see, yeah.
Um,
No mitigation. We haven't come up with any mitigation, and the only other thing I'll suggest is whether we have a few monuments there to
Marker.
markers to just monument to document.
Get some markers in there, man.
Marker or monument and a marker of where the buffer zone or what's appropriate given where, I don't know where the grass goes into the buffer zone and how much it's
So
at the 50 foot or versus just at the edge of whatever is not maintained now, so that it's just documented for the future, not to expand.
Can I make a suggestion about that? I've been making the comment with markers that we should figure out if there's a standard. So I did start doing some research and started putting it together into a PowerPoint. It's pretty consistent. And I was just doing I didn't contact any other commissions. I didn't have time to do that, but across different states and everything, there are different kinds of markers. And I would be happy to share that at some point. But most of the time, they're placed at the buffer zone. They're not placed kind of at the edge of disturbance. So I just wanted to provide that feedback that it's, that seems to be the most common way that it's done.
How practical is that? Because people already
Well,
have.
you can have different kinds of monuments. There are
No,
ones that
no.
can be driven into the ground. There's ones that can
Not
be
doing
on
it tonight.
trees.
We're not doing it tonight.
Well, I'm not asking to, but just giving the feedback so people know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Dan, can I just ask a question, because I've got a version of your site plan here that's zoomed in. The little red scallop along the front, where that's sort of along the front of the system that's closest to the road and then wraps around. Is that the tree line?
That's the approximate tree line, yes.
So basically this thing, they've got very little lawn there. You're packing the system right in there and removing some trees to make it fit in there. And that's really it, right? So,
Yes.
because I think that goes to Michael's question just about, if there's an opportunity for mitigation. Like I said, I have gone by this house countless times. It is very wooded in the front. It's wooded on the side. It's wooded in the back. It's pretty shady house site. And so I think they're just carving a little spot in the front to make it work.
Oh, no, as I said already, I've conceded there's no.
No, but I wanted to wrap my head around it, because I was even thinking, is there a little bit along the lines of what you were asking for, Michael, in terms of mitigation? And I'm just looking at this little scalloped edge, and I'm like, they're squeezing it in there. And so I think markers is the way to go.
Yeah, I just think we should come up with whatever it's 2 markers on each of the different sides there, and that's all I would ask for at this point, and before moving ahead to approve it. And the choice of materials is always the issue with our markers, is whether giving people a choice of whether they're using a big rock, a marble post, a granite post, or a concrete post.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm a little bit freaking out about this. We had this discussion back in February, and I listened to the recording so that I got everything that people said into a document. And it's, you know, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask Elizabeth to pull it up, but we did agree back in February on what the language in the order of conditions should be, and what our, you know, and there's an ideal sketch of what a monument could look like and what the language on the plaque should say. So what we agreed to back in February was that the language we're pretty hard fast on, but in the order of conditions, it can say, you know, the monuments can be of this, or this materials. And they have to be permanently affixed in some fashion so that they cannot be easily moved. And, you know, we already agreed to it. I'm sorry nobody else
I'm not
remembers.
asking for anything different. I'm saying, fine, just take that condition. It's just a matter of figuring out how many and where.
Yeah, I don't think anybody,
is.
I agree. I don't think anybody's saying we shouldn't do that, Jean.
But-
No, but I think it was like we were sort of opening it up to relitigate what the markers ought
No,
to
I don't think that was the
Okay,
intent
good.
at all.
It's a matter of
Good.
giving them the choice.
be. Okay, so in that case, do we want to put some markers in? Do we want to put them along the 50-foot no disturb? What do we want to do?
I think given that it's mostly wooded and natural anyway, I think it should be fine to put it along the 50-foot on each side.
Oh, I was going to say, move it out to the edge of the, what's already not altered, like that tree line or something like that.
I agree with that.
And just
Yeah,
put,
I think maybe somewhere in here where we've got the new tree line might be a good spot.
put a
Yep.
couple on that side and a couple on the other side.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right,
that's
Four.
actually inside the 50, right?
Oh, it's outside
Oh,
the,
this is the 50 here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
And
getting.
this is pretty well defined here with a big ledge outcropping.
so we just put a plaque right on the ledge.
okay. All right, so we're thinking 4 that are along that line,
Yeah.
two in the front and 2 on the side.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Did I see that you already drafted an order of conditions?
That's for Surrey, though.
Yeah, the wrong one was in the folder.
The folders got a little mixed up.
I did draft an order of conditions.
Well, for 30, for this one or for Surrey?
I did for both.
For both. So
I have like an echo on the.
there won't be any mitigation. The only thing that needs to be added to the order is what we just discussed about the monuments.
Right, so that was in that was my question. That's the only thing I questioned was, should we add monuments?
Yep. So I will send you that standardized language and you can incorporate it into the order.
Yep.
Or any special condition, the draft, I see the draft for 7 Surrey, is
Still
that?
getting dumb.
same
There
for-
is a draft for both of those. I've actually lost my.
I
It's
just
not clear.
uploaded it again, so
I
the
don't
order
see
of
it in the
conditions should be
folder.
there.
Yeah.
Sorry, you just changed it?
I did, they should be there
In the 32 Orchard.
in
Road?
the 32 Orchard. I just added them. I can see them on my screen. I
Ah,
don't know if you can see
All
them.
right, so 7 Surrey is still in there, but 32
Yeah.
Old Orchard is now there. Okay, I see it.
I've got to let me refresh and see. Oh, yeah. Okay, now it's refreshing. Okay, are there any special conditions in here that are? Since we have time,
Very standard.
perpetuity is 37. I would make an edit on 37. Generally, I thought we had for the fertilizer, I thought we had no phosphate and low, slow release nitrogen
Okay.
is what we do, since you don't need phosphate in this area and we're in a phosphate overload area.
All right. No phosphate.
No phosphate but low, slow release nitrogen. But I guess we don't have that at all in the,
Thanks.
Oh,
I added this condition. I did not see one in the sample that was given to me.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's all
Um,
right.
There's the copy that I'm looking at in the findings, C has the site plan for 7 Surrey Lane on the 32 Old Orchard conditions.
where,
The top, well, the name of it
First page.
oh, yeah, I see that.
and the name of the file. Is it the name of the file as
No,
well?
that's in 32 Old Orchard. I didn't change. I changed the date, but I didn't change the title.
There's always like little places where it sneaks in.
Same thing under erosion
13.
control.
Yeah,
Erosion control, page 4, number 13.
yeah.
Where are you now? Page 4.
Erosion control section, number 13.
Yep. Yep.
That's I saw that error
I
as
didn't
well
change
on
it.
Surrey.
I'll change that right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also on number 3 about NHESP mapped habitat, it finds that the project area is not within estimated habitat. I thought Dan just said it was.
It is within it.
So that's number 3. That condition must have carried over from something before.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm kind of confused also on erosion control number 13.
Yeah, she just fixed that one.
One. Yep, sorry.
I want to go back to 37 when you have a chance.
Yep.
It's, in the past, we have pesticides shall not, oh, okay, so that use or the buffer zone. It's used in, I guess the first sentence, we only allow any of the fertilizer in the buffer zone. There's no fertilizer in the BVW too, so maybe the first sentence has to be also changed. That should be no phosphate, slow release nitrogen used in moderation and only in the buffer zone, not the wetland resource.
So no phosphate content, slow release nitrogen, and only in the buffer, in the
Not the,
100 foot.
I don't know if we have to say not in the resource area, whether that's understood or whether a lawyer would say we have to say that. I move that we close the hearing.
Second.
All right, any other discussion?
Could I just ask a question about, I kind of hesitant to do this, about the markers again?
Well,
Sure.
There's going to be something in the order that gives you or the applicant the ability to choose the materials that the marker is made out of, and the language that should be put on the plaque on the marker is pretty much standardized, and that'll be in the order as well. And then we're asking for 2 in the front and 2 on the side.
Okay. So, but the language itself, we're talking about a, I don't know, what, 12 by 12 sign or something, or do you have a
Something
sense
small.
of?
It's small. It's
Yeah.
meant.
Okay.
it's smaller than that, I think, in the end.
It's smaller than that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's small.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Smaller than that because it's on a concrete post.
Or a boulder.
Or a
Or
boulder. Okay.
So I've got a motion that's been seconded. Do I have any other discussion on that? All right, all those in favor of closing the hearing, Michael?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
I see Cindy. Cindy, when did you come in?
I came in I didn't participate in the discussion. I just listened. So I don't know if, I'm happy to agree to close the hearing.
Okay. Cindy?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, the motion carries. All right, I'm going to move that we accept the findings and approve. So let me just read through that. I move that, I'm not going to read all of it. I'll just read D and then the approval. I move that the commission hereby finds that the work proposed to construct a replacement septic system, which lies within the 100-foot buffer zone, will not result in adverse impacts to adjacent wetland resource areas. The commission further finds that the applicant has presented evidence sufficient to demonstrate that the proposed activity, including mitigation measures, will not cause alteration to the bordering vegetated wetland during or after construction if all conditions in the order as either already laid out or discussed this evening are met. Let me just jump forward because I don't think I need to read all that. So therefore, the Sherborn Conservation Commission hereby finds that the proposed project is approved, subject to the findings and conditions contained herein and discussed this evening.
Second?
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Great, motion carries. Okay. We're
Thank
done
you.
with you. Thank you, Dan.
Do you have a sense when that might get over to Ellen so we can schedule a Board of Health meeting?
Joyce, what
3
is
to 6 weeks, Ann. No, Monday or Tuesday. Once Joyce gives me the correct conditions, I'll get it over to her. So
Okay.
Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning, I'm guessing.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Now we've got 9:50. Well, it's 2 minutes early, but I don't know. Do we have everybody here for 416 Orchard Street in Millis?
Yes, you have Kevin Murray.
Okay, there's Kevin. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, we might as well start. We've got this RDA for 416 Orchard Street in Millis, where there's a proposed barn and it's located in Sherborn. Is somebody gonna present or?
So, Kevin, you want to explain your project?
You are muted, Kevin.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So we would like to construct an 18 by 24 foot barn. It's about 12 foot tall at the rear of our property. It's in the back, 1/3 of the lot. It's really for storage for, whatever gardening and lawnmower and utilities we have. It's not going to be finished in any way at all. It's just a rough barn. We wanted to do it in a timber frame style, but I knew that we were getting close to the wetlands at the back. So I reached out to the conservation people just to make sure that I wasn't getting myself in any trouble to build this. I'll have to go through Sherborn to obtain the permit. It's not in the town of Millis jurisdiction. It's going to be built on, it would be built on 6 sonotubes. It's not a full foundation or anything like that. It's just the 4 corners and 2 intermediate sonotubes that it would be built on. And that's really it. It's a pretty simple structure.
You're not going to be using it for livestock or chickens?
No, no.
And sonotubes, I forget. So the barn is actually going to be lifted up off the grade, right?
I'll bring it up off the grade 12 inches, yes. So it won't be in contact with the dirt.
Right.
Yeah, so the sonotubes will be going down about 4 feet each, just below grade. I'm assuming that's what the building inspector is going to want. It's a timber frame. It's an old, it's a timber frame post and beam structure. My son wants to build it. He's historian buff and he wants to build it in the old style type barn construction. So it's not your typical conventional construction.
That's
Is this,
admirable.
is this an existing lawn area? I'm trying to,
Yes, it is.
okay, can't remember. Okay.
It's what kind of, it's going to be a peaked roof
Yes.
and the only, so it's an existing lawn. And I don't know what the topography is like there. Is it much, do we have to worry about? You've been there, Joyce. What
Yeah,
about
so
the,
the topography is flat and there's a stone wall that brings the rear property line and the side property line that face towards the wetland. That's about 2 to 3 feet high. So that's a barrier, and there's a shrub layer between the barn and the wall. So, and the area is flat.
oh, so it's all flat. So in terms of erosion, sort of
It's
runoff
not
from
gonna
the
go
road.
anywhere to the wetlands. It would be stopped by the rose shrub and the stone wall that surrounds the property.
Okay, but it also looks like there's wetlands to the north as well from your,
Wetlands to the north and there's wetlands to the west.
and the north
That's
is,
around the back of the property.
you're not worried about erosion or runoff to the north.
It actually rises up a little bit in front of the wall. I don't think that's gonna be a problem.
Okay.
I would just add to the conditions that any excavated material, when you're installing the sonotubes, be removed out of the jurisdictional area.
Okay.
Is that part of what Joyce's recommendation is in 3, no washing of concrete mixer and no construction debris within the buffer?
That's what I can say, no excavated material.
Okay, right, that's true. It's slightly different, yeah. Any other questions?
I would just make a comment. This is another one. It would have been great to schedule a site visit. So I think, yeah, we need to try to get back into that.
Yeah.
This is an RDA.
This is an RDA.
We don't usually do site visits for RDAs.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Have to rely on our agent.
Yeah. All right, well,
Is it all lawn around the barn too? To the stone wall? Is that all altered?
Say that one more time.
Is it all altered buffer up to the stone wall and to the?
No, there's a row of shrubs between the proposed barn and the stone wall.
Okay.
Would that remain?
Yes.
Yes, he's not proposing to take. So he staked out where the barn was going in the back of the field, in the back of, well, the yard. And where that's located, there's probably 20 feet between the stakes and where the shrubs are on one side, and on the other side towards the west, there's probably 15 feet to shrubs or trees. So was plenty of area there without having to take any materials, any shrubs or trees down.
I guess given the property lines, we probably don't need to worry about any markers.
Well, given the retaining wall, given the stone wall that's there.
Right.
Joyce, would it be possible to move it further out of the buffer?
Well, what you're not seeing on his sketch is that there's a very big vegetable garden with a fence around it, which is outside the 100, but it kind of encompasses that backyard. There's also there is a chicken coop there behind that garden, which I think is also outside the 100, but there isn't a lot of lawn that isn't already occupied by garden.
Would it be possible to have like livestock? Is the barn big enough that people could?
No, they're not going to do livestock.
I'm just wondering if it would accommodate that in the future.
I'm not sure where they would do that. Not to say he couldn't fence his yard and then put livestock, but Kevin, you'll have to speak to that.
Yeah, there really isn't enough room for livestock back there. I don't have any intentions of doing that. As Joyce had mentioned, it's just woods around the back, and we have the garden, and we have a chicken coop, closer towards the house, and that was pretty much going to be it from what my plans are. I just needed a place to store garden equipment, materials, and my lawn tractor.
I do think, Carol, though, that it is a good question. It's a fair question to ask because should Mr. Murray ever decide to sell his property, somebody with livestock, horses, sheep, goats, whatever, might look at that property and say, ah, look, there's a pole barn already existing. I can just put my animals there. So I do think it's a fair question to ask.
Question is, do you condition it as one of the conditions that if there's a change in livestock use there, that it should come back to us? Is that the practical? I'm trying to figure out whether there's any practical way to deal with that beyond some sort of condition, even though it's in an RDA.
Well, now that I'm thinking of it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think a building that's supported by sonotubes is really where you would put animals so that are going to be moving around and of substantial weight. I think you would need a building with a foundation for animals.
No, you could build a pole barn. I mean, I know people that have done it out in Western Mass. They put up a pole barn and they put horses in it.
So the question is, what can we practically do? Do we want to, I don't know if Mr. Murray would care whether we put a condition that just says, because we're going to do, I'm leaning towards myself that it's a -3 so that it can go ahead with conditions. And that one of the, I see the conditions that Joyce, the second condition is really just obviously has to do the plan, but we could put in a condition that that there would, if there's any animals to be used back there, that it would come back to the commission.
One thing, I guess one of my concerns about it that we should put a condition like that is that it's 18 by 24 feet. That's not a shed just that you put your lawnmower in. I don't know. My living room is about 22 feet and 18 by 24 is a pretty substantial amount of space. So I think we should condition it considering the possibility that a future owner might think, oh, great, this is a great place for my goats, my sheep, my whatever.
So, Mr. Murray, are you averse to us putting a condition that if you were going to house livestock there in the future, you'd have to come back before the commission?
Not a problem. Yep,
okay,
it's fine.
All right,
Yep.
I move that we approve this as a DOA with a -3 with the conditions as outlined in the form, installing straw wattle and calling the conservation office for inspection prior to commencement of work. Barn is to be installed in location staked on the ground, no washing the concrete mixer, no construction debris within the 100-foot buffer, no excavated materials within the buffer, and if any livestock is to be housed there in the future, that should come before the commission for further consideration.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I have a question, and this is just, maybe I just don't get this. We're talking about the construction of a new building, and I'm wondering why this is, and I'm sure somebody can explain to me why this is being considered under an RDA instead of expecting to have an entire NOI.
When I walked out there with him, because it was an existing lawn and it was more than 80 feet away, and he was putting it on sonotubes. I don't think I saw the dimensions of it. I didn't. The 24, when you read 24, it sounds bigger than what it looked like on the ground. So I guess to me, it just seemed like it was an appropriate application. Because there was nothing, there was a physical barrier between the wetlands and the project.
I guess to me, I just feel like whenever we have new construction, we typically have the wetlands delineated and we're careful to keep it out of the 100.
We addressed that it can't be, unless we are asking him to rip up his garden, it can't be taken out of the 100. And I'm thinking back to a standard that we used to have when I was the agent, that if something could be conditioned with 4 conditions or fewer, that was one of the ways you determine, you know, can this be reviewed just by an RDA versus a notice of intent? So now we're up to 5. We're really at 4 conditions. If you incorporate the excavated material into condition number 3. And the 4th condition is, remind me, Neil.
You're gonna
Is
have any
livestock.
Right. So
The second condition is not really a normal condition because normally you build to the plan anyway.
Right. So, okay, well,
seem to want to hold to that standard, but that's a standard that the commission used to use.
And the reason I went with that condition number 2 is there's stakes on the ground. His sketch isn't necessarily an accurate sketch, but the stakes on the ground were what I went by. And so I didn't want anything to go closer to the wall than what was staked on my ground.
So we should have a photograph in the, I guess, Mr. Murray, if we don't already have it, whether we can get a photograph of that area.
Sure.
That could be
Yep.
part of the file for us.
Okay.
all right.
It's a little
Any
bit-
other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Michael,
Aye.
Neil, I, Jean,
Aye.
Cindy,
Hi.
Carol,
No.
Aye.
Courtney? All right, the motion carries. Okay. Thank you.
Have fun
All
building.
set?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank
Yep.
you. All right. 17 minutes.
Wow. How unusual.
It is. It's weird.
Yes.
Usually we're just going to the lash constantly to get through the damn thing.
We could do the COC. That's not advertised, but I don't know if Greg's coming or not.
But I thought we weren't ready for it. We decided.
Joyce hasn't been out there.
Oh, is that the one she hasn't been out to? Oh, okay.
Okay.
So if we have a moment, could I just get some clarification? Because Carol brought up some good points, and I'm out there talking with these people who want to know what direction to head in. So something like, is there a consideration or size for structures? And I mean, I understand what Carol was talking about with the size of something, and in the buffer zone, if something's an open lawn, or if it had to have any trees coming down, I know for sure I would have said that was a notice of intent. But
I think,
looking for a little guidance, I think.
yeah, I mean, it's only impacting the outer buffer zone, correct? Not the,
Right,
not.
right.
So
The
that's
outer zone.
the first thing you consider. I don't think there's any, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's any thing that's been codified that says if it's a new structure, that's automatically going to be a notice of intent. Because I mean, think about how we approve septic systems in the buffer zone with RDAs all the time. And that's a lot of disturbance.
Right, but if it had needed trees taken down or shrubs taken down or
That
things
would've
like
been-
that, that would have been very straightforward to me.
Yes.
And I think this wasn't. It wasn't that I was trying to.
If it's right, I think if it's flat and it's already altered buffer and lawn and it's flat and things
And
like
it's outer buffer.
out of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the topography makes a difference to me, and I agree it's a little bit of an art, and whether there's going to be runoff and stuff like that.
I mean, in that case, obviously I voted no, and probably I would not have seen somebody's vegetable garden as something that couldn't be moved. That's, I just feel like, yeah, when we're putting an entire building, it should be an NOI.
Right. Problem is whether we would have had more different conditions that we wanted to worry about the enforcement. I mean, because in the end, I would find it hard to say that we're going to have an significant adverse impact to the wetlands from that. I mean, it's not an insignificant, I don't know if all of it's in the buffer zone, But if it's 300 square feet or so in the buffer zone at the very edge of it, then it would be hard for me to say that that's going to have an adverse impact, and that an RDA basically is based on whether it would have an adverse impact. And that's a basis for giving it a negative. But yeah, no, I think this is a gray area where in this case, I think it's appropriate, but any of the other factors could have tripped it the other way.
Yeah, I think Joyce made the right call. The devil is in the details with this one. It's not going to create any new impervious surface because it's being raised up off the ground in an area that's already lawn. So, and it's flat. I mean, that's all been said already. So I'll stop.
But we won't always agree.
Well, and I would look at it in the future as I go forward, maybe a little differently.
Okay.
Anybody think of anything else to talk about?
You finished all the trail stuff, right?
NOI versus RDA.
Yeah.
Can
that's
everyone swing by this weekend and sign the signature sheets? Because I can't issue Dan's order of conditions if they're not signed. They're out.
They're outside already?
Oh yeah, they're out in the blue bin.
Okay, we do want to help.
Covered in pollen. Bring gloves.
Okay, put on the calendar.
Thank you.
And I guess I haven't heard, I don't know if anybody's been tracking it, whether in terms of the state legislation on allowing Zoom meetings after June 15th. Has anybody even paid any attention to that or seen anything?
Well, the scuttlebutt at town hall is that it's going to be extended till September, but nothing official.
Okay.
That reminds me, weren't we going to talk about the mosquito spraying?
Oh, yeah.
Can I just say one quick thing about the Zoom meetings versus in person? I've already reserved a room for us at the community center for the second meeting in June. No. Yes, the second meeting in June and the 2 meetings in July. So Elizabeth, as soon as you find out that we don't have to meet in person, I can cancel those.
Okay. In other news, the town hall is supposed to open June 15th. If anyone has any business they want to come in for.
Oh, you mean the front stairs are going to be done?
No, you have to come in the side entrance until the front stairs are done.
Oh, so it's not ADA, so it's not.
It is
ADA.
not yet, no.
Okay.
Has anybody tried to drive through the center of town during rush hour in the morning lately?
Were they doing the work there? Yes, I've been there when they were doing the sidewalk work and some stone masonry work by whatever.
Okay.
Yes. It's impressive that they put in concrete,
Yeah.
not all asphalt. But let's go to Cindy and mosquitoes. We're waiting for you, Cindy.
Yeah, all right, great. Let's talk about the mosquitoes.
Yes.
So the
Tell
reason
them.
I wanted to put this on the agenda is because that notification came out from MACC. I mean, the time is now past, but any town that wanted to opt out of, the whole town to opt out of the spraying that they do, had to be submitted by May 28th. And I was thinking, wow, I've always wanted to opt out of it for our town, and I could never really understand why we spray, because as a town, we're more nature minded. So I was just thinking about that, and I said, oh, well, maybe, I didn't know who really decided that. And so I started talking to Jean about that, and she said that the selectmen actually decide that, and they've never agreed to do that historically. So, but Jean said that years ago, the Conservation Commission talked about it amongst themselves, and then submitted conservation land to the county/state that does the spraying to exclude our conservation lands from that spraying. So that's why I asked to put it on the agenda, because I'd like to talk about it and see what everyone else thinks about excluding our conservation lands from the mosquito spraying, the broadcast spraying.
I move that we exclude our lands from the spraying. I agree with you.
Yes, I second it, but it's.
Didn't we have to do pie plates or something in the past?
We do. I'm happy to do that. I just did my own property today, so I'm happy to take that on and do the pie plates or whatever I come up with, because I don't do pie plates on my own, but I print a no spray off from my computer and do that.
Elizabeth,
But I'll probably adhere it to some kind of pie plate situation. Maybe Jean, actually, you might be able to guide me in that as to what you used to do, because I haven't seemed to come up with a foolproof method for my own property. I kind of do a variety of things.
Okay, we can talk about it, but
Yeah.
there's also the component of notifying them
Yep.
where what the addresses are. And Elizabeth, maybe there's something in the file for, I know Allery has notified them in the past.
Yes, we've notified them in the past. I forget what we did, if it's map and lot, like parcel numbers. It's not so simple as the address for our land, because they, it's sprawled out over what would be multiple addresses.
Yep.
So I think it's a GIS coordinate we give them, but I'll look back in the file. We have done it in the past.
Okay.
Do we want to consider? Well, I put a motion on the floor that we do that. So maybe we should finish that before I bring up whether we should go to this select board again.
Yeah, I would like to talk about that too, Michael. But yeah, let's respond to your motion.
All right, well, we had a motion and a second. Do we have other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
There you go. What else did you want to talk about with it?
Whether we should maybe, I mean, it's too late now, but maybe next year, I'll put it, on my calendar, and so that we can start talking about it in like January or something before it even comes up. And maybe we want to suggest to the selectmen that we just totally opt out as a town. Many towns are looking at doing just that, opting out of this broadcast spraying that the state does. So maybe we want to consider something like that and take it up with the selectmen. I don't, I mean, I'd be happy to do that. But I don't know how other folks feel.
I think we should start. No, I think we should do it, and I think we could start now, so it's in place, and maybe by some chance we can get it in late, even if they by some chance agree.
Well, the first thing someone should do is, get in touch with the selectman's office and ask Diane, for example, have they already voted on whether or not to opt in or out?
I can get in touch with Diane.
Okay. So Cindy,
Yeah.
you're going to put it on your calendar for next January.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're going to stay on?
You didn't miss it, did you?
Good work, Jean. That was pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, you didn't miss that. Yeah, yes, I will stay.
Yay!
Yay. I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to make it like a public cornering of you, but I'm glad Jean did. All right. So I move then that we recommend Cindy for reappointment for another 3-year position to the select board, not to the
We did
select
that
board,
last
to the
time,
board.
actually.
But we did?
Yeah, you did do it the last time.
We did. It was
Oh. It was already
subject to
set up.
her confirming it.
It was
All right, then I withdraw my motion.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, we got 4 minutes.
So we're going to go ahead. Okay, so we might put it on the agenda next time, if depending on what Cindy learns from the select board about this. So we
From
can.
Diane, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Is this something that you would just typically just check through like Diane, and you wouldn't like get in touch with a select board person on the side or anything like that to talk to them about?
Start with Diane.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but then I would continue there. It's interesting how as an individual, I'm actually on the Mass website, government site, like trying to exempt myself. You can do it online.
You can. I put it on Nextdoor today.
And it has a request exclusion form,
Mm-hmm.
aerial spray and wide area operations, that it has both.
It has aerial because if
Yeah.
you read the letter, there's a letter associated with that. I mean, maybe they've changed things, but I already did my property. I didn't see where it said aerial, but
Yeah, no, it just did, although I just hit
huh.
submit and I can't see it again, but you have to go back. But people should go look at that. You put the actual link on the Gov site online there, because I had to go through it through the Central Mosquito Project Control Board. You had to go to blop, to blop, to blop.
Yeah.
But does that mean you still have to put up the no spray signs? I didn't read all that.
You do every 50 feet. Well, it gets to be too much at 50 feet. So
Yeah,
it's like 60 or 70 is what I go.
right. But it's the big aerial one that really is the best to get rid of too. Yeah.
Well, so what I had read online, Michael, is that with the aerial spraying, if the governor, I forget what the wording is that they used, but if he deems that it's necessary, I'm still not coming up with the wording. If he deems that it's necessary, you can't opt out of that. Like it just happens and you can't opt out of it.
Right. The public health issue. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's 9:45.
It is.
Okay.
On my watch.
Yep, my watch is a little fast, maybe.
Yes, exactly. No, slow, I mean.
All right, let's. Okay, notice is hereby, because then I don't know what we're going to do till 10:30. We're going to take a break. We'll leave the Zoom on and I'm going to go do something. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the town of Sherborn will hold a public hearing at Sherborn Town Hall, hold a virtual public hearing, Sherborn Town Hall, 19 Washington Street for Sherborn, Mass. At 9:45 p.m. on the 3rd of June, 2021. The hearing is held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetland Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 17, to consider a proposal by McIntyre Engineering and Septic Services for the replacement of a failed septic system at 7 Surrey Lane, Map 12, Lot 1, or Lot 18. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given an opportunity to speak at this hearing. All right, we have Mr. McIntyre back.
Yes, representing the homeowners of 7 Surrey. This is
Great.
also a failed septic system that we were retained to design a new one. Did the screen show up for everyone?
Yep.
Okay. So just to give you some bearings, the Surrey Lane is over to the left-hand side. The well is in the front yard, and the existing system is in the backyard, essentially about this rectangle right here. Wetlands were delineated on the property, and the buffer zone extends well into the developed part of the property. There's an in-ground pool here, and there's security fencing running around the property for that pool. Everything inside that fence is essentially lawn. There are a couple of trees here next to the stockade fence. We're proposing to put the septic system in essentially the same area. We're going to slide it further from the wetlands, so the leaching area at least is outside the 50-foot buffer, which should be an improvement. The tanks, however, we've got a septic tank and a pump tank to pump up to the leach field. They will be slightly inside the 50-foot buffer zone. But again, it's previously disturbed. It's a lawn area there. And we did that in order to try to keep as straight a shot of this pipe coming from the house as possible to prevent any obstructions or clogs in that pipe. The grading is essentially the same. We're raising the yard slightly because it's a very high groundwater table here. And we'll be grading into the 50-foot no disturb buffer of that lawn area here. No tree removal is required down near the wetlands, but there are a couple of trees right along this stockade fence that will need to come down to prevent root infiltration into the new leaching field. Construction access is going to be off Surrey Lane across the front yard and into this area here. They'll be taking down the fence, of course, and there'll be one tree here, a pine tree that has to come down for the trucks to get in and out of the backyard.
Dan, can you, I tried to look at this plan on my computer and I have a tiny screen. Can you please run the cursor along the buffer lines? I'm having a hard time seeing them.
Okay. So right in here is the 50-foot buffer
Okay,
that arcs right along the wetland. And then further out here is the 100-foot buffer.
okay. And I'm sorry, but I was confused when I saw 100 buffer. I missed the word well. So that's a different buffer.
Yeah, it's a pretty busy plan. We've got an on-site well here and an abutters well where their protective radiuses come right into the property as well.
Did you designate a staging area or a stockpiling area?
We didn't, because we don't really anticipate stockpiling here. They're going to be excavating some of this out and we're going to creating this slight berm here, but the rest of the material will have to be just live loaded into a dump truck and hauled off because there's no place to put it.
Well, it's good that it's improving some of the existing characteristics.
Well, it is an improvement. We're getting the septic system out of the groundwater table
Right.
and further from the wetlands. So from that, I think it's an improvement.
Joyce, do you have anything you want to add to this?
The only question this is the best place and the best type of system to use for this application. The only question I had is erosion control barrier ran along the fence, and could it not run closer to the septic rather than having it go all the way out? Was there a reason to have it go all the way out past that deep hole, number 3, as opposed to bringing it up a little closer around the backside of the system?
Well, the only reason we really did that was because we've got to get back in here to restore the area we disturbed for that test pit. So the contractors are going to be back in there and regrading that and replanting it.
All right, that makes sense.
Other questions?
Seems pretty straightforward, I guess. It's all disturbed area with nothing really changing.
Right.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any concerns before we go to close the hearing? No?
No, I just, one quick question. I know Dan said that the spoils are going to be hauled off site. And do we need to like call that out at all as a condition, or?
I had a condition that said there's no stockpiling or equipment storage within jurisdiction.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in agreement with that. That makes sense.
Okay.
I have nothing else.
Do we need to have a monument anywhere? Sorry to do that.
Well, there was a fence here, and so I didn't call that out as I thought.
What kind of fence?
Put a
Chain
sign on the fence.
Unless you put
It's
it
a
on the-
stockade fence, right? It's a big
Oh,
wooden stockade fence.
it's a wire fence along the backside.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's two types of fencing out there. There's stockade along part of it and then a wire fence on the rest of it.
Maybe a couple of monuments along the wire fence might be nice, just as a educational reminder.
Or what about putting plaques on the fence itself?
Yeah, that's what that's what I meant. But yes, I agree with that.
How many?
Maybe 3.
Okay.
Just eyeballing it, 3 along that wire fence and back.
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, the width of the system there, that's 38 feet. So we're only looking at about 40, maybe 60 feet right in here. So every 20 feet, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
It's fairly obvious where it is, but
Is there much lawn or disturbed area outside the fence towards the wetlands?
no, this is all undisturbed wooded area right here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I agree. Like probably the people that are living there now know, and they know to kind of stay away from it. But maybe anyone moving in might not know, especially if they're not used to nature being all around them. And so it might just be nice to have that there as a friendly reminder or
Sure.
educator.
Okay. All right. Well, I move we close the hearing.
Second,
Great.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Michael?
aye.
Neil, I. Jean?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
I,
Courtney? Courtney? All right, well, the motion still carries. Okay. And then so is there anything else we need to do on the conditions other than adding about the monuments?
We need to make the same edits that we made to Old Orchard.
Regarding fertilizer and
Yeah.
et cetera.
Fertilizer one and getting rid of 7 Course Brook under erosion control.
Oh, yeah, I didn't catch that one, 13.
And Courtney's not here, so we got to go wake her up to. And then let's see, beginning whether, looks like in the beginning, it's got all the right stuff. So yeah, I only saw those 2 things for the draft order. But, so we can move things along again because I assume Dan wants this ASAP.
Okay.
Okay, you can go ahead with moving.
Okay. All right, so let's see. I move that we approve the following findings: that the commission hereby finds that the work proposed to construct a replacement septic system, which lies within the 100-foot buffer zone, will not result in adverse impacts to adjacent wetland resource areas. The commission further finds that the applicant has presented evidence sufficient to demonstrate that the proposed activity, including mitigation measures, will not cause alteration to the bordering vegetated wetland during or after construction if all conditions in the order are met. Furthermore, the Sherborn Conservation Commission hereby finds that the proposed project is approved subject to the findings and conditions contained in the order with the edits as just discussed. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Neil, I. Jean?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
No, they're dropping like flies.
They are. Courtney?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I said I.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Courtney, still gone? She's gone. Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
While I got you, everyone here, could I just ask a general question? On the order of conditions we received for 21 Prospect Street, the Greniers,
Yeah.
there was a condition in there that referenced the DEP policy on reuse of contaminated soils.
Yeah.
we were trying to figure out what the intent of that was. It didn't appear to apply to a septic system replacement.
I think that is lifted right out of our regulations, our local regulations regarding fill. No?
Yeah, you know what? And I'm reading that right on 7. I happen to be reading that right now. I'm reading that for 7 Surrey Lane, and it's probably the same one, but it's 36 on 7 Surrey Lane. It says any fill used shall be clean fill containing no garbage. Is that what you're referring to, Dan? I mean, it's pretty long. It goes down into reportable concentrations of MCP.
Right. It references a DEP policy that talks about, when you read the DEP policy, it's about reusing contaminated soil at landfills.
Yeah.
I think the intent is that we want whatever fill comes into the septic system is clean fill.
To be clean, yep.
And that's what we have on our plan as well. But it seemed like when you read that policy literally, we've got to test that soil. We've got to notify DEP in writing that it's clean. We've got to notify the commission that it's clean. And I think that type of testing is very burdensome.
Well, let's see.
Because what the fill that comes in for a septic system is clean fill. Most of it is coming in from the Cape now to meet the Title V gradation.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do on most construction projects is we do a visual and olfactory test on whether we think there's any contaminants. And if there is, we'd reject it. But
so, Dan, when you say a visual and olfactory, that sounds like you look at it and you smell it.
that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
I was trying to be professional.
Can't fool us.
Well, we can't, unfortunately, unless they come back to us for an amended order. I mean, it does sound burdensome, and so it has to stay put in the order for 21 Prospect.
Right.
Unless.
Yeah, it's too late to do anything on that.
Yeah. But we already voted on the conditions tonight, didn't we, for this one?
We did. We just did.
Yeah, but I'm revising some of them, so can we not just take 36 out of the last 2?
I can't answer that. I don't know how to answer that.
I think we can, because we've drafted and changed.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, though, is it in there because is that that well, I just took it off, but is that the Mass DEP policy number COMM 97-001, is that in there because maybe you can't always see or smell the contaminants, and so therefore to ensure that there aren't contaminants, that's why the testing is required? I mean, maybe that's why it's in there. I don't know, I didn't write that up, but to me that would seem like maybe that's why that testing is in that condition, because you can't always just see or smell it. Kind of like why we have our water tested, right? Because you can't always just see or smell a contaminant.
Well, I think that's true, but when you read that policy, it's really geared for known contaminated soil that's being reused at either a landfill cover or at a large reclamation project. And they know what to test for because they know it's contaminated.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's really a clean fill coming from a virgin gravel pit. So in order to find contamination, we'd have to test for a wide range of contaminants because we don't know what we're testing for.
And is that testing done under what policy or regulations do you follow for that? Is that from the Board of Health?
No, there is no policy for that.
Just a gradation test.
It's just a gradation test.
So they're bringing clean material in that gets inspected and and it's installed in lifts, and they run a sieve analysis to make sure it's the proper size. And you're looking at everything that gets placed in the order. It's almost like you could just leave the first sentence of number 36 in that just says, any fill material used shall be clean fill containing no garbage, refuse, rubbish. Because for a septic system, it's not, you can't have that anyway. I mean, it's by definition, the material you bring in is clean sand.
But it's also, we also have our regulations 10 point in on fill. That maybe is what we should be referencing for fill, which basically has that no fill. I mean, I can put, this is the older version. I don't think it's been changed, but let me put this up here, even though I couldn't find the screen two, where is it here? Do people see 10.1 there? Why don't you guys read that? I think it's, I'm gonna go see whether, I don't think it changed. For some reason, this is an older version of our regs, but.
It's the same wording. Now it's section 5.3.
Right. So Dan, what did Dan and Joy, what do you feel about this wording here that we basically have, that we can't change really?
Yeah, I think that's essentially what's in Title V as well. It's got to be clean fill. They don't specifically reference, the mass contingency plan, but that's where the, the smell and visual test for the oil and hazardous materials come into play.
So you think you could, well, obviously, I don't think we have much choice since this is what we normally have.
Right.
It's in our regs, so maybe we just have to reference this, whether few people feel comfortable with what we have in our regulations.
I like the 5 passes of the bulldozer.
Yeah, I know. I can't quite figure what that is. Can somebody explain that to me?
Is it to pack it down?
Yes, it is.
Not 4 and not 6.
I don't know. No, but it's at least, no, it says it's leak. So I'm wondering about that myself, whether for work, whether we should even have that in there. It came up when I was pushing this for the 40B projects. And I was like, whoops, I have to admit, I have no idea, other than the fact that obviously they just want it to be well compacted, but why that's part of the wetland regs, I'm not quite sure. So is there some paragraph that the other issue is that second paragraph about, which we've never done. We've very rarely done except for large projects. We've done that for example, we had that with Whitney.
Yeah, maybe we just use the first paragraph.
First paragraph.
But we should consider maybe revising the regulations to
Oh, sure.
qualify that second paragraph, but for now. Okay, so we want to move the whole first paragraph in, and how much are we changing out of 36? Is that swapping it all out for?
So let's swap it all out for that
last paragraph. Actually, the last, sorry. I would still keep the commission deserves the right.
The last sentence.
The last sentence.
Okay.
And whether we just use that first paragraph.
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
Do we have to vote on that?
Well, we didn't vote on we only voted on findings. We didn't vote on, we voted on conditions because often this happens after the fact anyway. So, because I would suggest you put the same change in Old Orchard.
Will do.
Thanks for pointing that out, Dan.
Yeah. That was.
Is Dan still here?
Thanks for considering it.
Yeah. He's out smelling things.
Smelling and observing.
This is good. It's helping to fill the time until the next hearing, which doesn't start for another 20 minutes.
Who's here? Can we informally discuss it? So it's
I think Neil's suggestion of taking a break is a good one.
Oh, I gotta stop sharing. Sorry.
Were there any minutes?
No.
Nice try.
I didn't see any, but I just wanted to ask.
Well, look,
Did you guys talk about Coolidge Crossing?
Yes.
Yeah.
You did.
talk about it again to fill the time.
And did you talk about 41 North Main and 31 Hunting too? Yeah.
Yep. Well, look, I was somewhat serious. If we don't have anything to talk about, why we need to make ourselves talk for another 23 minutes is silly. If people want to go take a break, stretch your legs, get a cup of tea, I think we should just come back at 10:30 and pick up with what the last thing is on our agenda.
We finish approving this project?
Yeah, I think we did finish the vote. We did vote.
We did. We voted on, we closed the hearings and voted on the findings.
Did you guys do the violations?
We did.
Everything.
Oh, everything. Okay.
Yeah, we agreed to have you
I'll
go.
stop
there.
asking.
We're gonna go sick you on the file later.
Did we lose? We can't have lost Courtney because I see her flower, but she was in the process of writing the order of conditions for the last thing that's on the agenda. So I hope she comes back.
I guess Art is to hear for the last thing, right? We're almost.
Yep.
God, we're so close on that one too, I think, if I recall.
Okay.
Well, this is
So are we taking a break?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take it.
Great.
I'm going to type a little message in the chat in case anybody shows up.
What's the,
Good idea.
well, nobody can show up unless you let them in.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And it's at
We're
10:30.
gonna record the break.
I'm
What's-
going to come back at 10:25.
What, is it exactly 10:30? I thought it was, oh, okay. All right.
10:30. All right. See you
Yeah.
guys in a little bit. All right, it's 10:30. We've got a quorum. Let's rock this thing. Okay, so I am reopening the hearing for 13 Pleasant Street, and I apologize for not being more sort of up to speed on where we left it last time. I just don't remember. But was Joyce involved with this, or Jean? Do you remember?
She was. She's here,
Oh,
and
she is there.
we could just take off on from here with the the memo that we got from Art dated
Right.
June 1st.
Yep.
Art, do you want to walk us through that quickly?
Sure. Arthur Allen from Ecotech Incorporated, wetland scientist for the applicant. So basically, just to recap, the first hearing we had for the proposed addition, which is a proposed closed roof weatherized addition that would replace an existing open deck. The entire project is within the 100-foot buffer. A small portion of the existing deck and proposed addition is within the 50-foot buffer. The work area is surrounded by mowed lawn. There were comments primarily from Joyce and some discussion with the commission at the first hearing. And we provided a response to comment letter dated June 1st, 2021, along with a revised plan. If I can, I'll put the revised plan up while we're talking about the letter. There it is. So this would be the revised plan that we provided, and the revisions dated April 2nd. I believe, yeah, April 2nd, 2021. And so basically the first four issues were all pertaining to clerical revisions or additions to the notice of intent form, which I provided on a revised notice of intent form that was attached to the comment letter. Those are pretty self-explanatory. The next comment pertained to a portion of the work being located in the no alteration zone as defined in the Sherborn Wetland Regulations, section 5.2. And our response is in accordance with the bylaw regulations. A small part of the proposed addition falls within the 50-foot no alteration zone. In my professional opinion, this work will not adversely affect the interests of the bylaw. And the rationale is the entire project footprint is currently an existing wooden deck. The surrounding area is mowed lawn. There will be some increase in imperviousness due to the change from an open deck to a closed roof addition. The change is proposed to be mitigated by the addition of roof gutters and a dry well to promote infiltration of stormwater runoff. The dry well is right down here in the corner. Erosion and sedimentation will be mitigated through the use of a 12-inch compost filter sock proposed at the work limits. So we've just revised the originally proposed siltation fence to a compost filter sock. Any disturbed soil outside the addition footprint will be stabilized and revegetated with grass. Also, it was brought to our attention there's an existing area of thin grass cover between the addition and the wetland. We're proposing to overseed this with a shade tolerant seed mixture and mulch it, and also proposing additional mitigation in the form of native shrub plantings in the existing lawn along the wetland boundary. So those would be up here, again, along the flagged BVW boundary, close into the intermittent stream. Basically in between a series of boulders there, we're proposing 10, minimum of 10 native shrub plantings, a combination of at least 2 shrubs that I specified. There would be 2 to 3 foot tall containerized native shrubs, including such as sweet pepper bush, red osier dogwood, high bush blueberry, and winterberry. And we plant at least 2 of the 4 species on alternating centers in that area as mitigation and demarcation of the wetland boundary. The next comment was revise the site plan to show the project access route. We originally had a note over here at the existing driveway, construction entrance at driveway only. We've added an additional note because there was a concern about access adjacent to the wetland on the other side. So we've added a note with arrows indicating no construction access on that side of the site. It's really not practical anyway because there's a fairly steep slope off this end of the house that would be difficult to access with equipment. But we've added those notes. Revised plan to show a stockpile area. We showed a stockpile area right off the end of the driveway. Temporary stockpile. As noted earlier, there'll be no change in grading and excess soil will be removed from the site before the end of the project. Proposed addition will create impervious surface. Please revise the site plan to address treatment of stormwater runoff from the surface of the addition. And then as noted above, roof gutters and dry well are proposed for the addition. And comment, consider potential mitigation, plantings, wetland markers, etc. And I stated as noted above, native shrub plantings are proposed. In discussion with the applicant, they're reluctant to propose markers. They are aware that the commission is discussing a policy for markers, and they prefer to just go with the plantings at this point. If a policy is developed in time to condition the project, they consider that as a condition. revise the proposed erosion barrier to a mulch stock. That's been done. And the commission expressed a concern regarding an existing sump pump outlet pipe located at the stream bank. And we've added a plan note that's proposing to cut back the pipe to the edge of the existing bank. That'll actually prevent that splash drop out of the end of the pipe, and to place a small splash pad under the outlet to dissipate any flow velocity from the sump pump. So that's a summary of the revisions, and the revised plan with these notes and revisions is in front of you tonight. Thank you.
All right, do people have questions, observations? Joyce, what do you think of these proposed changes?
They made all the changes that I had requested as far as the plan goes. As far as, they proposed more plantings than we had discussed, so that's nice. One of the discussions on site was markers on boulders, but I leave that to the commission. That's
Yeah, I noticed that, or I heard Mr. Allen mention not that they didn't really want to do that. We were only asking, I think, for 3 markers on the boulders. Wasn't it just 3? Was it 3 or maybe it was 2? Anyway, it was just on the boulders. It wasn't obtrusive or sticking out of the ground. It was going to be placed on something that was already existing there. I didn't think it was a big ask.
Mm-hmm. We don't have a policy. I don't think we're developing a policy. We're still at the point where with each project, we discuss whether we feel markers would be advantageous or necessary. So in this case, it's, these are new homeowners. They've already proposed plantings that kind of do a demarcation, and we know they're not preparing to sell. I don't know. The unobtrusive markers seem like, I agree, not a big ask, but I guess other members should weigh in on that.
I'm just trying to gauge, Mr. Allen, why, is there any real resistance to putting 2 to 3 markers on the boulders?
Well, honestly, I mean, I had a discussion with them, and they were on the last meeting, and they heard the commission kind of debating and considering a policy, and they just didn't feel like, in the absence of a consistent policy, that they wanted to do that. But I mean, if the commission chooses to condition the markers, then then it'll be up to them whether they want to accept that or not. So
Right. I guess all I would say is that while it's not a policy, it's been our practice for quite some time to, when, as Jean put it, when it's seen as advantageous or educational, to request some markers to denote a wetland area or resource area. So we've been quite consistent, although there's not any kind of written policy around it in requesting that. So
right.
I mean, I agree with Cindy. I think if the boulders are there, it's, it's not a big ask to have 2 to 3 just small placards affixed to them that just note that there's a resource area beyond. And we do have standard language stuff that we kind of approved in a past meeting that we usually put in the order of conditions.
Sure, at your discretion.
Okay. Does anybody have any? Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, I could go. I mean, I could lessen just to have 1 marker on 1 stone, given that they're doing all of the plantings. But I wanted to bring up whether in exchange or lessening how many are there. When I look at the wetland flags, and you go around the corner to wetland flag A7, where is that an area where it's very clearly demarcated that it's a resource area, or whether, to me, where that would be in terms of more useful education for the future.
But isn't that inside the tree line?
Well inside the tree line,
Yeah, okay, so there's no way that, okay, so it's well inside there. That's what I was trying to,
Yeah, because I agree, it would be if that was like lawn area or something like that, but it's inside the trees.
okay, yeah, I mean, I see the scallops there. I could go with just one plaque there, just so that there's at least the one point there that they get the gist of the fact that it's a resource area there. It's fairly obvious otherwise, but I could be accepted to just do one plaque there. I can't tell. I'm looking at where the, yeah. I don't feel too strongly in this case, given all the plantings, and I would be whatever.
Right, and I would say I like the plantings, but the plantings don't communicate wetlands. It's plantings. So
That's why I would say that one plaque would be enough for me, just to,
yeah, I'd say one or two would be fine.
let's come up with a number basically, and
I think 2 is good.
I guess
All right, 2.
I can't tell whether whether Robin's still there to talk with us. If she's available. I see her on the Zoom.
Does anybody else on the commission have an opinion about it?
I agree with 2 markers on boulders.
Okay. Well, why don't we just roll with that? I don't think that's a big ask, and it's certainly not obtrusive given that they're existing boulders. Okay, what else?
I'm very satisfied and pleased with the modifications to the plan.
I agree.
Right, I guess the only thing, right, everything looks good except we had that splash pad. I guess there wasn't, it was hard to tell if there's much erosion there anyway, whether, I guess it's just going to be on the plan. I can't tell whether it's going to be a condition, whether we'd have, just to make sure that there's no evidence of erosion in the longer term, since I guess this is going to have growing seasons. Whether just a condition that that any erosion from that from the sump pump is monitored and changes made as necessary if there's any signs of erosion. It'd be just some wording for a condition.
So I see that we don't, at least in the Dropbox, have a draft order for this. Is that correct?
We don't, and unfortunately, as I said earlier, Courtney has already been putting it together, but she seems to have left us. So I'm trying to keep notes here.
Okay.
Other than that, I think we're fine. We can close the hearing.
Yeah. So is that a motion?
Yes, I move to close the hearing.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Neil? Aye. Jean?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Aye.
And Courtney? All right, the motion passes. And then do we need to wait to draft this order before we do the findings?
No, we should do the findings now. I would do it.
Okay.
We don't have any. You just say that we, with all the conditions discussed, kind of that general one. What do people?
Yeah, let me do this. I'm gonna poach the language from one of these other ones, and we can do it that way. So just give me 1 second to pull something up.
No way we can get it done, moving faster.
Yeah. So basically, I move that the following findings are accepted. The commission hereby finds that the work proposed to construct, the work proposed in this project, which lies within the 100-foot buffer zone, will not result in adverse impacts to adjacent wetland resource areas. The commission further finds the applicants presented evidence sufficient to demonstrate that the proposed activity, including mitigation measures, will not cause alteration to the bordering vegetated wetland during or after construction if all the conditions of the order are met. Furthermore, the Sherborn Conservation Commission hereby finds that the proposed project is approved subject to the findings and conditions that will be drafted in the order along the lines of what has been discussed this evening.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney? All right, the motion passes. So Courtney, you said, is working on this order. Are we gonna get back together to sort of finalize it the next meeting, or are we just gonna take the draft she's got, modify it based on the notes tonight and finalize it that way?
I'm willing to do the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Okay. All right, we will do that.
Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
You
Yes.
too, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, got it done
All
in
right,
minutes.
that was good. All right, in the interests of the hour, I move we adjourn.
Oh,
Second.
I don't even get a second. You guys want to stick around? Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, aye. Jean,
aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney, one last try. All right, good night, Joyce. Good night, everybody.
Right.
Thank you again for all your help.
Right.